Hello there, and welcome to Earth's History, where we ask the questions that challenge our understanding, where we explore the boundaries between mystery and knowledge, where we investigate claims that shake the foundations of what we think we know about human history. Tonight, we're diving into one of the most controversial questions in archaeology. Are there secrets being hidden from us? Is there evidence of civilizations far older than we've been told? And if such evidence exists, why would anyone hide it? This is a question that millions of people ask, a suspicion that gnaws at many who look at ancient structures and wonder how they were built, who read about mysterious artifacts that don't fit our timeline, who feel that the official story of human history is incomplete or deliberately obscured. It's a question worth taking seriously, not because there's necessarily a conspiracy, but because understanding why people believe that, what evidence they point to, and how archaeology really works can teach us something profound about human history and about how we discover truth. If you've ever looked at the Great Pyramid and wondered how ancient people could have built it, if you've ever heard about artifacts that seem out of place in time, if you've ever felt that there's more to human history than what textbooks tell us, you're about to explore these questions deeply. We're going to look at the controversial discovery, the mysterious structures, the claims of cover-up, but we're also going to look at how archaeology actually works, what evidence really shows, and whether the mysteries might have explanations that are even more fascinating than the conspiracy theory. Wherever you are right now, I hope you're comfortable, ready to explore these questions with an open mind, but also with critical thinking, ready to see evidence from multiple perspectives, ready to discover that truth, when we finally find it, is often stranger and more wonderful than fiction. If this journey into the controversies and mysteries of archaeology brings you new understanding, if it helps you think critically about claims and evidence, if it shows you that real history is as fascinating as any alternative theory, I'd be grateful if you'd like the video, subscribe to the channel, or share it with someone else who wrestles with these questions about our past. So settle in, let your mind open to possibility while keeping your critical thinking sharp. And let's begin. Because across the world, there are structures and artifacts that challenge our understanding, discoveries that don't fit neatly into the timeline we've been taught, mysteries that archaeology is still working to solve. The question is, are these mysteries evidence of something being hidden? Or are they evidence of something even more interesting? The complex, surprising reality of how civilizations actually develop. Let's start with why this question resonates with so many people. Why millions believe that archaeologists might be hiding evidence of ancient advanced civilizations. This isn't just random paranoia. There are specific reasons, specific pieces of evidence that people point to, specific patterns that seem suspicious. First, there are the monuments, structures so impressive, so precisely constructed, that it seems impossible ancient people could have built them with the technology we think they had. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the classic example. Built around 4,500 years ago, it contains approximately 2.3 million limestone blocks, each weighing 2 to 80 tons, fitted together with incredible precision. The base is level to within a few centimeters across a base of 230 meters. The sides align almost perfectly with the cardinal direction: north, south, east, west. How did ancient Egyptians, supposedly using only copper tools, wooden rollers, and human labor, accomplish this? The precision seems impossible. The scale seems impossible. And so people ask, did they have help? Did they have technology we don't know about? And if evidence of that advanced technology was found, would archaeologists tell us, or would they hide it to protect the established narrative? Then there are the worldwide similarities. Pyramids in Egypt, pyramids in Central America, pyramids in Southeast Asia, step pyramid, massive stone block, astronomical alignment. These cultures supposedly never contacted each other, yet they built similar structures. Coincidence? Independent invention? Or evidence of a shared source, a lost civilization that taught them all? A global culture that archaeologists refuse to acknowledge? There are the out-of-place artifacts, the O parts as they're called, objects that seem to be in the wrong time period, that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of technological development. Ancient batteries in Baghdad, precision-machined objects in Egypt, a computer-like mechanism from ancient Greece, maps showing Antarctica without ice. If these are real, if they're genuinely ancient, they suggest civilizations had technology far more advanced than we credit them with. And if archaeologists dismiss these artifacts without proper investigation, Is it because they don't fit the narrative they want to maintain? There are the legends, flood myths from cultures worldwide, stories of lost continents like Atlantis, tales of ancient high civilizations destroyed by catastrophe. These stories are remarkably consistent across cultures that supposedly had no context. Are they all just myths, or are they memories, oral histories of real events, real civilizations that academia refuses to take seriously? And there's the gatekeeping, the way archaeology is structured, with academic institutions controlling what gets published, what gets funded, what theories are acceptable. Young archaeologists who propose controversial ideas find it hard to get position, to get grants, to be taken seriously. Is this just normal scientific skepticism, or is it a system designed to suppress inconvenient discoveries? When you lay all this out, the case for hidden evidence seems compelling. It seems like there's a pattern, a systematic dismissal of anything that challenges the established timeline of human civilization developing from hunter-gatherers to farmers to cities over the past 10,000 years. But before we conclude, there's a conspiracy. We need to look deeper. We need to examine the specific claims, understand how archaeology really works, see what the evidence actually shows when we look at it carefully. Let's start with the monument, with the Great Pyramid as our example. The question is, could ancient Egyptians really have built this without advanced technology? The answer, according to decades of archaeological research, is yes. But it required something just as impressive as advanced technology: massive organization, sophisticated engineering knowledge, and extraordinary human effort. We know how the pyramids were built. Not every detail, but the broad outline. We found the quarries where the limestone was cut, with tool marks still visible in the rock. We found the boats that transported blocks down the Nile. We found the ramp, both internal and external ramp, that were used to raise the block. We've found the workers' villages, the bakeries that fed them, the medical facilities that treated their injuries, the payroll records showing they were paid workers, not slaves, the copper tools that seem too soft to cut stone. They work when combined with sand as an abrasive, and when you have thousands of workers and decades of time. Experiments have shown this. Modern stonemasons, using ancient techniques, have successfully quarried and moved large blocks. The precision? It's impressive, but it's achievable with careful surveying technique, using water levels for horizontal alignment, using astronomy for cardinal direction alignment, using careful measurement and checking. The ancient Egyptians were obsessive about measurement and precision. They had sophisticated mathematics and geometry. The scale? The Great Pyramid took approximately 20 years to build, with a workforce that may have reached 20,000 to 30,000 during peak period. That's not impossible. It's a massive project, but human societies can accomplish massive projects when motivated and organized. We build comparable structures today: skyscrapers, dams, bridges, using different technology, but similar principles of organization and sustained effort. What about the worldwide pyramid? Is this evidence of a shared source civilization? The answer is more interesting than a lost civilization. It's convergent evolution of architecture. Pyramids are a stable way to build tall structures with primitive technology. If you want to build something tall without modern materials like steel and concrete, a pyramid, wide at the base, tapering to the top, is one of the most stable forms. It distributes weight efficiently, is resistant to earthquakes in some designs, and can be built progressively, layer by layer. Different cultures independently discovered this. The Egyptian pyramids and Mesoamerican pyramids look similar from a distance, but are actually quite different. Egyptian pyramids are true pyramids with smooth sides, built as tombs. Mesoamerican pyramids are step pyramids with temples on top, serving as religious centers. The construction techniques are different. The purposes are different. The dates are different. Egyptian pyramids are 2,000 to 3,000 years older than most Mesoamerican pyramids. The similarities exist because humans, facing similar challenges, building tall with stone, found similar solutions. This happens all the time in human history. Bows and arrows were invented independently in multiple places. Agriculture was invented independently at least 7 times. Writing was invented independently at least 3 times. Pyramids being invented independently is not mysterious. It's expected. What about the out-of-place artifacts? Let's examine the most famous one, the Baghdad Battery. This is a ceramic jar found in Iraq, dating to around 200 BCE to 200 CE, containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod. Some have claimed it's an ancient battery, evidence of electrical knowledge in the ancient world. But archaeologists who've studied it have a simpler explanation. It was probably used for electroplating, depositing a thin layer of gold onto silver objects using a chemical process. This doesn't require knowledge of electricity in the modern sense, just observation that certain chemical reactions happen when metals are placed in acidic solution. It's clever, but it's not evidence of advanced civilization, and it's from 2,000 years ago, not from some lost pre-Ice Age civilization. The Antikythera mechanism. This is a genuine mystery, a complex geared device from ancient Greece around 100 BCE that could predict astronomical positions and eclipses. When it was discovered, it seemed impossibly advanced. But here's the thing, archaeologists don't hide it or dismiss it. It's been extensively studied, x-rayed, reconstructed. It's celebrated as evidence of how sophisticated ancient Greek science and engineering were. It shows that ancient peoples were far more capable than we sometimes give them credit for. But it's not evidence of a lost advanced civilization. It's evidence that ancient Greeks, with their well-documented tradition of mathematics, astronomy, and mechanical engineering, could build sophisticated devices. It fits perfectly into the context of Greek science. It's amazing, but it's not out of place when you understand Greek intellectual history. The Piri Reis map. This is a 16th century map that some claim shows Antarctica without ice, suggesting ancient knowledge of the continent before it froze. But cartographic historians have shown that the map actually shows the coast of South America, distorted and misinterpreted. Antarctica wasn't accurately mapped until the 19th and 20th centuries. The Piri Reis map is interesting as a historical document, but it doesn't show impossibly ancient knowledge. Time and again, when we examine these out-of-place artifacts carefully, we find either they're not actually out of place, they fit into known history when properly understood, they've been misinterpreted, the Baghdad Battery, they're hoaxes or misidentification, or they're genuine mysteries that archaeology is actively investigating, not hiding. What about the flood myths and Atlantis? Are these memories of real lost civilization? Flood myths are indeed widespread, but there's a simple explanation. Floods are common disasters in human experience, especially for societies living near rivers and coasts. Major floods have occurred throughout history, some catastrophic enough to be remembered in oral tradition for generations. There's even a specific flood that may have inspired some Near Eastern flood myth, the Black Sea Deluge, a hypothesis that around 7,600 years ago, rising sea levels caused the Mediterranean to breach into the Black Sea, flooding thousands of square kilometers of inhabited land. This would have been traumatic for the peoples living there, and the memory could have been preserved in myth. But this doesn't require a lost advanced civilization. It requires normal Neolithic people living near water, experiencing a catastrophic flood. Exactly what the myths describe. As for Atlantis, we need to remember that Plato, who wrote about it, presented it as a philosophical allegory, not as history. He was making a point about hubris and the fall of civilization. Scholars debate whether he based it on any real place, perhaps Minoan Crete, destroyed by a volcanic eruption, but there's no archaeological evidence for a literal Atlantis as an advanced pre-Ice Age civilization. Now, let's address the gatekeeping question. Do archaeologists suppress evidence that doesn't fit their narrative? The reality of academic archaeology is more complex than either extreme. Neither a perfect meritocracy nor a conspiracy to hide truth. Academia has gatekeeping mechanisms, peer review, credential requirements, funding committee. These exist for good reason, to maintain standards, to filter out bad science, to ensure resources go to credible research. But these mechanisms can also be conservative, resistant to revolutionary ideas, slow to accept evidence that challenges established theory. This is a real problem in science generally, not just archaeology. Thomas Kuhn documented this in The Structure of Scientific Revolution. Paradigms resist change until evidence becomes overwhelming. However, this conservatism is not the same as conspiracy. Archaeologists aren't hiding evidence of lost civilization. What's actually happening is SIC, standards of evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If you claim there was an advanced global civilization 12,000 years ago, you need strong evidence. Multiple sites, artifacts, remains, clear stratigraphy. Suggestive anomalies aren't enough. This high bar frustrates alternative researchers, but it's how science protects against false conclusions. Career incentives. Actually, archaeologists would love to discover evidence of a lost civilization. It would be the discovery of the century, career making. Nobel Prize worthy. The idea that they'd suppress such evidence to protect boring established theories doesn't match the incentive structure. Archaeologists want to make groundbreaking discoveries. Incremental progress. Real archaeological discoveries do change our understanding, but incrementally. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, discovered in the 1990s, pushed back the date of monumental architecture by thousands of years. It challenged ideas about what hunter-gatherers could accomplish, and archaeologists embraced it because the evidence was solid. Actual structures, proper excavation, clear dating, complexity of evidence. Archaeological evidence is messy, ambiguous, requiring expert interpretation. A stone that looks artificially shaped to a layperson might be naturally weathered to a geologist. Context matters. Where something was found, what it was found with, what the stratigraphy showed. Alternative researchers often lack this expertise and misinterpret evidence. So what's really going on? Why do these mysteries persist? I'd argue that the real story is more interesting than a conspiracy. Human history is more complex, more surprising, more sophisticated than we often assume, and we're still discovering its full richness. Let's look at some genuine archaeological mysteries and discoveries that show ancient peoples were far more capable than we sometimes think, without requiring a lost advanced civilization. Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey is one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the past few decades. It's a monumental structure, massive stone pillars arranged in circles, some weighing 10 to 20 tons, carved with sophisticated reliefs of animals. The shocking part? It dates to around 11,600 years ago, built by hunter-gatherers before agriculture, before pottery, before metal tools. This challenges everything we thought we knew about the progression from simple to complex society. Archaeologists aren't hiding Göbekli Tepe. They're celebrating it, studying it intensively, publishing papers about it. It's forcing a revision of theories about how civilization developed. This is how archaeology works when genuine revolutionary evidence appears. It's embraced, not suppressed. Gunung Padang in Indonesia is another site with controversial claims. Some researchers claim it's a pyramid, potentially very ancient, possibly 10,000 to 20,000 years old. Mainstream archaeologists are skeptical, arguing that much of the structure is natural, that the dating methods used are questionable, but they're not refusing to investigate. There's ongoing research, debate, testing. The controversy is scientific, not conspiratorial. Submerged structures around the world, off the coast of India, Japan, the Mediterranean, have sparked claims of lost civilization. Some are genuine structures, like the ancient port city of Pavlopatri in Greece, submerged when sea levels rose. Others, like the Yonaguni Monument in Japan, are probably natural rock formations that look artificial. Underwater archaeology is challenging. Limited visibility, difficult access, expense. Not every formation has been thoroughly investigated, but this is due to practical limitation, not deliberate hiding of evidence. Advanced ancient technologies did exist, and they're not hidden. The Romans made concrete that in some ways is superior to modern concrete. It lasts longer, especially in seawater. We've only recently figured out why volcanic ash creates a unique chemical reaction. Ancient metallurgists made Damascus steel with properties we couldn't replicate until recently. Ancient astronomers made accurate observations and predictions. These technologies aren't evidence of lost supercivilization. They're evidence that ancient peoples were smart, observant, capable of sophisticated achievements within their technological context. We sometimes underestimate, assuming that without computers and modern tools, they couldn't accomplish much. That's condescending and wrong. Let me share a perspective that I think reconciles the mysteries with the evidence. Ancient peoples were just as intelligent as us, just as creative, just as capable of remarkable achievement. They just had different tools, different knowledge base, different context. The pyramids aren't mysterious when you accept that ancient Egyptians were brilliant engineers who spent decades planning and building. Göbekli Tepe isn't mysterious when you accept that hunter-gatherers could be sophisticated, organized, capable of symbolic thought and monumental projects. What we're discovering as archaeology progresses is that the story of human development wasn't a simple linear progression from primitive to advanced. It was complex, with different societies developing different capabilities, with sophistication appearing earlier than we thought in some areas, with impressive achievements by peoples we dismissed as simple. This is genuinely exciting. It doesn't require lost civilizations or hidden evidence. It just requires us to respect our ancestors' intelligence and capability. Now, let me address a deeper question. Why do people want to believe in lost advanced civilizations? I think there are several psychological and cultural reasons. Awe, and wonder. Ancient structures inspire awe. Attributing them to lost super-civilizations makes them even more wondrous, more mysterious. It's emotionally satisfying. Distrust of authority. Many people distrust academic institutions, government, established authority. Believing in hidden evidence fits into this worldview. It makes you feel like you're seeing through the lies that others accept. Desire for meaning. A lost golden age, an ancient advanced civilization destroyed by catastrophe, is a powerful mythic narrative. It gives history meaning, suggests cycles, implies we could lose everything too. It's compelling storytelling. Eurocentrism reversal. Some alternative theories, like ancient aliens, have racist implications, but others are reactions against Eurocentrism in archaeology. They argue non-European peoples were more advanced than mainstream archaeology credit. This has some validity. Archaeology has historically been Eurocentric and has underestimated non-European achievements. Pattern recognition. Humans are pattern-seeking animals. We see patterns even where none exist. Pareidolia. Worldwide pyramids seem like a pattern requiring explanation. Sometimes the pattern is real. Convergent evolution. Sometimes it's coincidental, but we're driven to find meaning in it. These are legitimate psychological needs. Wonder, meaning, skepticism of authority, respect for non-European cultures. The question is whether lost civilization theories actually satisfy these needs better than real history. I'd argue that real history, properly understood, is more wonderful than any alternative theory. Real ancient peoples, with intelligence equal to ours, accomplishing amazing things with limited tools. That's more impressive than attributing achievements to lost super civilizations or aliens. The complexity of actual history, with its false start, its independent invention, its surprising sophistications in unexpected places, that's richer, more interesting than a simple story of one lost advanced culture. The ongoing discovery process, with archaeology constantly revising our understanding as new evidence emerges, that's more exciting than a static conspiracy where truth is hidden and unchanging. Let me give you specific examples of how the real story is more fascinating than the alternative. The peopling of the Pacific. For decades, it seemed impossible that ancient peoples could have crossed thousands of kilometers of open ocean to settle islands across the Pacific. Some proposed lost civilization or even alien intervention. Then, archaeologists and anthropologists pieced together the real story. Polynesian people developed sophisticated navigation technique, reading stars, currents, clouds, bird flight patterns. They built ocean-going canoes capable of long voyages. Over centuries, they deliberately explored and settled islands across the Pacific, from Taiwan to Easter Island, one of the most impressive feats of exploration and navigation in human history. This real story of human ingenuity, courage, skill, is far more impressive than a lost civilization had technology cross ocean. It shows what humans can accomplish. The construction of Stonehenge. How did Neolithic Britons move massive stones hundreds of kilometers and erect them precisely? Archaeology has shown they used massive timber structures, log rollers. Possible water transport? Enormous human labor over generations. Recent discoveries of nearby settlements showed this was a major project involving large communities, sophisticated planning, astronomical knowledge. The real story reveals complex Neolithic society, far more advanced than we thought, but without requiring lost civilizations. It's impressive precisely because they did it with Stone Age technology and human determination. The Nazca Lines in Peru, enormous geoglyphs in the desert, only fully visible from the air. Ancient aliens helping, lost flying technology. The real explanation: the Nazca people created them by removing the top layer of reddish pebbles to reveal lighter soil beneath. They planned them carefully, using small-scale models and simple surveying tools. The lines are visible from nearby hills. They were probably ritual pathways, possibly astronomical markers. No aliens needed, just ingenious humans using simple techniques to create monumental art for religious and cultural purposes. That's wonderful. Maya mathematics and astronomy. The Maya had sophisticated mathematics, including a concept of zero, independently invented. They made accurate astronomical observations, predicted eclipses, created complex calendars. This achievement is diminished by claiming they had help from lost civilizations or alien. The truth that indigenous Mesoamerican peoples developed sophisticated mathematics and astronomy through their own genius is far more respectful and impressive. Let me now address the specific question: is there any plausible scenario where archaeologists would hide evidence. In reality, there are situations where archaeological information is restricted, but for understandable reasons, not conspiracy. Site protection. Locations of some archaeological sites are kept confidential to prevent looting. Looters destroy content, steal artifacts for sale, irreparably damage our ability to understand the past. This is protection, not conspiracy. Indigenous sensitivities. Some sites are sacred to living indigenous people. Archaeologists increasingly work with indigenous communities, and sometimes those communities request limited publication of certain information. This is respect, not conspiracy. National security. In rare cases, sites in politically sensitive areas might have restricted access, but this doesn't mean the sites are hidden. They're just not publicly accessible due to location. Peer review process. Papers submitted to journals aren't immediately public. They go through peer review, which takes time. This can create a lag between discovery and public announcement. This is quality control, not suppression. None of these constitute hiding evidence of lost civilizations. They're practical considerations in the real world of archaeological research. Now, let me play devil's advocate and present the strongest case for genuinely mysterious elements in human history that don't quite fit our current understanding. The Younger Dryas. Impact hypothesis. Around 12,800 years ago, Earth entered a sudden cold period called the Younger Dryas, lasting about 1–200 years. The standard explanation is disruption of ocean currents, but some researchers propose a comet impact or airburst as the trigger. Evidence includes a thin layer of unusual materials, nanodiamonds, platinum, shocked quartz, at the right date, widespread fire markers, sudden megafauna extinction. This is controversial. Many archaeologists and geologists are skeptical, arguing the evidence is ambiguous, but it's being seriously investigated, debated in peer-reviewed journals. If proven, it would show that human history has been shaped by catastrophic cosmic events more than we knew. That's genuinely exciting and doesn't require conspiracy, just honest scientific investigation of difficult evidence. Pre-Clovis sites in the Americas. For decades, archaeologists believed humans first arrived in the Americas around 13,000 years ago, Clovis culture. Any claims of earlier dates were dismissed, but evidence accumulated. Monteverde in Chile, 14,500 years old. White Sands footprints, 21,000 to 23,000 years old, and other sites. Eventually, the consensus shifted. Humans were in the Americas earlier than thought. This shows archaeology can be slow to accept revolutionary evidence, but it does eventually accept it when evidence becomes overwhelming. It's not conspiracy. It's appropriate scientific caution, followed by paradigm shift when warranted. Göbekli Tepe and the origins of agriculture. Göbekli Tepe was built by hunter-gatherers, then deliberately buried around 10,000 years ago. Why? We don't know. What was its purpose? We're not sure. Possibly ritual, possibly astronomical, possibly social gathering place for scattered groups. This site challenges our understanding of what hunter-gatherers could accomplish and why they might build monuments. It suggests that social and ritual complexity came before agriculture, not after. This is revolutionary and still being worked out. Genetic mysteries. Ancient DNA studies have revealed surprises. Neanderthal DNA in modern humans we interbred. Denisovan DNA in some populations. Ghost populations that left genetic but not fossil traces. The story of human evolution is more complex than we thought. These mysteries are being actively investigated, published, discussed. They're not hidden. They're at the cutting edge of research. So what's my conclusion after examining all this evidence? All these questions. There is no conspiracy to hide evidence of lost civilization, but there are genuine mysteries. There is ongoing discovery, and our understanding of human history is constantly being refined and sometimes revolutionized. The real story is that archaeology is a young science. Systematic archaeology is only about 150 years old. We've excavated perhaps 1% of potential archaeological sites worldwide. There's enormous amounts we don't know. But what we do know is remarkable. Humans, with intelligence equal to ours, have been accomplishing impressive things for far longer than we once thought. Hunter-gatherers could build monuments. Ancient mathematicians rivaled modern ones in some areas. Ancient engineers moved massive stone, built structures that endure millennia. We don't need lost super civilizations to explain these achievements. We need to respect our ancestors and recognize that different tools don't mean lesser intelligence. The gaps in our knowledge, and there are many, are opportunities for discovery, not evidence of conspiracy. Each year, Archaeologists make discoveries that surprise us, that challenge previous assumptions, that expand our understanding. For example, Homo naledi in South Africa, discovered in 2013, challenges our understanding of human evolution with its strange mix of primitive and advanced features. Denisovans, known almost entirely from DNA, show there were human species we didn't know existed. The Nebelivka megasite in Ukraine shows Copper Age peoples built huge settlements of 10,000 plus people, much larger than thought possible. For that period, LiDAR technology is revealing massive ancient cities hidden under jungle canopy in Central America, Southeast Asia, showing civilizations were larger and more complex than visible ruins suggested. These discoveries come from mainstream archaeology, published in peer-reviewed journals, celebrated and studied. If there was a conspiracy to suppress unexpected findings, these wouldn't be published, but they are. Because archaeologists want to discover truth, want to understand human history in all its complexity. Let me offer a final perspective. The question, what if archaeologists are hiding evidence, reveals more about our relationship with authority and knowledge than about actual archaeology. In an age of information overload, of institutional distrust, of rapid change, it's comforting to believe there are hidden truths, that someone knows the real story, even if they won't tell us. It gives us something to rebel against, a reason for our feeling that something is missing from official narrative. But the reality is more challenging and more empowering. There is no hidden truth, no secret knowledge, no conspiracy. There's just the slow, difficult process of discovery, with many mysteries still unsolved, many questions still unanswered. You have access to the same evidence archaeologists use. Journals are increasingly open access. Museums display their finds. Archaeological sites are documented. The knowledge isn't hidden. It just requires effort to understand, expertise to interpret, time to acquire context. If you're genuinely interested in these questions, the path forward is learn the basics of archaeology, anthropology, history. Understand how dating works, how sites are excavated, how evidence is interpreted. Read primary sources, actual archaeological reports, journal articles, not just popular books or YouTube videos. See what researchers actually say, not what others claim they say. Visit sites and museums. See artifacts in person. Talk to archaeologists. Most are passionate about their work and happy to discuss it. Think critically about all claims, mainstream and alternative. Ask, what's the evidence? How is it obtained? Who's making the claim? And what are their credentials? Is there peer review? Could there be alternative explanations? Embrace mystery without jumping to conspiracy. It's okay to say, we don't know yet. Science advances by acknowledging ignorance and working to fill it. The real human story, the one archaeology is uncovering, is more magnificent than any story of lost supercivilizations. We are a species that, with stone tools and human labor, built pyramids that stand 4,500 years later. We are a species that, with nothing but observation and mathematics, predicted eclipses and mapped the stars. We are a species that crossed oceans in wooden boats, settled every continent, adapted to every environment from Arctic to tropical. We are a species that independently invented agriculture, writing, mathematics, in multiple places and time. We did all this not because lost civilizations taught us, not because aliens helped us, but because we are human, intelligent, creative, determined, capable of cooperation on massive scales, capable of planning across generations, capable of achievements that still inspire awe. That story, the real story, is worth celebrating. It's worth understanding. It's worth protecting from distortion, whether the distortion comes from those who underestimate ancient peoples or from those who attribute their achievements to outside help. So to answer the original question, what if archaeologists are hiding evidence of the first civilization? They're not. There's no conspiracy, no hidden truth, no suppressed evidence. What there is an ongoing process of discovery, with mysteries still unsolved, questions still unanswered, and surprises still waiting to be found. That process is open, transparent, self-correcting, and genuinely exciting. The next great archaeological discovery might come next year, might revolutionize our understanding. When it does, it will be published, studied, debated, and eventually incorporated into our understanding of human history. Because that's how science works. Not through conspiracy and suppression, but through evidence and argument, through discovery and revision, through the slow accumulation of knowledge that brings us ever closer to to understanding the magnificent, complex, surprising story of how we became human. Thank you for exploring this question with me, for thinking critically about claims and evidence, for being willing to look beyond conspiracy theories to the more complex and wonderful reality of human history. May you continue to ask questions, to seek evidence, to think critically, and to marvel at the genuine achievements of our ancestors, achievements that need no embellishment, no lost civilization, no ancient alien. Because the truth of what humans have accomplished is already extraordinary. Rest well, knowing that the mysteries of the past are being slowly revealed, that each generation of archaeologists adds to our understanding, that truth, when we find it, is more wonderful than any fiction we could invent. But before we close this conversation entirely, let's dig deeper into some of the most persistent mysteries, the questions that keep resurfacing despite archaeological consensus, the anomalies that warrant genuine investigation. Because dismissing all alternative theories would be intellectually dishonest, some of these mysteries deserve serious examination, and understanding why they persist helps us understand both archaeology and human psychology. Let's start with one of the most enduring mysteries, the precision and scale of ancient construction. When we look at the blocks of the Great Pyramid, at the precision of the fit, at structures like Pumapunku in Bolivia, with its seemingly impossible stonework, or at the Easter Island Moai, with their intricate features and mysterious transportation, we're confronted with a real question. How did ancient peoples, with supposedly primitive technology, accomplish feats that challenge modern engineering? The honest answer is, we don't always know the exact method. We have educated guesses based on experimental archaeology, based on the tools we've found, based on examining the work itself for clues. But for many specific techniques, the exact process has been lost to time. This is not because archaeologists are hiding anything. It's because most ancient work wasn't carefully documented. Ancient people didn't leave instruction manuals. They didn't explain their techniques. They just did the work. And when they died, much of that knowledge died with them, unless it was passed down through apprenticeships that themselves were lost over centuries. But here's what's important. The fact that we don't know the exact method doesn't mean we should jump to impossible explanation. It means we should keep investigating, should run experiments, should examine the evidence more carefully. Consider the quarry work at Aswan, Egypt, where granite for pyramids and temples was extracted. We can still see unfinished stones showing how the work was progressed, tool marks that give us clues about tools used, quarry ramp, and work areas, pounders made of dolerite, a harder stone that could have been used. From this evidence, archaeologists and experimental archaeologists have reconstructed plausible quarrying methods. Not perfectly, we don't know every detail, but plausibly, with techniques that could work with tools available to ancient Egyptians. The precision of pyramid construction. Recent research shows that ancient Egyptians used water-based leveling technique. By creating shallow channels and filling them with water, they could establish perfectly level reference points. This is ingenious. Using physics, water always finds a par-e or level surface, rather than complex instruments. It's low-tech, but highly effective. The alignment to cardinal directions, likely achieved through astronomical observation and careful surveying with simple instruments like plumb bobs and stakes. The ancient Egyptians were obsessed with precision and would have spent months, even years, on the surveying and planning phase before ever placing the first stone. But here's what I want to emphasize. Even if we can't explain every detail perfectly, even if mysteries remain about exact technique, this is not evidence of lost civilizations or ancient alien. It's evidence that ancient peoples were intelligent, observant, capable of achieving remarkable results through ingenuity and persistence. In fact, I'd argue that overestimating the mystery actually disrespects ancient peoples. When we say, the precision is so perfect, it must be impossible for ancient people to achieve, we're implying they couldn't be that smart, that capable, that determined. But of course they could. They had the same brain capacity we do. What they didn't have was our technology, our shortcuts, our machines. So they had to be more clever, more patient, more careful. That's not a weakness. It's a different kind of excellence. Now, let's address the question that underlies so much of the conspiracy thinking. Why would mainstream archaeology resist alternative theories? First, it's important to understand that archaeology, like all sciences, has mechanisms for handling new evidence and revolutionary claims. The process is, a claim is made, often with preliminary evidence. The claim is published or presented at conferences. Other experts examine the evidence, try to find flaws or alternative explanations. If the evidence holds up to scrutiny, it's accepted and incorporated into the field. If the evidence doesn't hold up, It's rejected, but can be revisited if new evidence emerges. This process is sometimes frustratingly slow. Revolutionary ideas often face resistance, but this is actually a feature, not a bug. The process is designed to prevent false conclusions from taking hold, to maintain standards of evidence, to ensure that accepted ideas are based on solid ground. The problem occurs when researchers operate outside this system, when they make claims without proper evidence, when they resist correction, when they interpret any skepticism as conspiracy rather than standard scientific scrutiny. For example, there are claims about the Sphinx's age. Some researchers claim the Sphinx is older than mainstream archaeology accepts, possibly 10,000 plus years old rather than 4,500 years old. The evidence cited includes water erosion patterns, geological analysis of the limestone, and controversial dating methods. Mainstream archaeologists are skeptical because the Sphinx is located at the Giza Plateau, right next to the pyramids of Khafra. Inscriptions, reliefs, and other evidence clearly associate the Sphinx with Khafra artifacts found near the Sphinx date to Khafra's reign. The water erosion argument has been challenged by other geologists. The dating methods used by alternative researchers are controversial and don't match other dating techniques. This isn't conspiracy, it's reasonable skepticism. The Sphinx has clear iconographic and archaeological associations with Khafre. Finding one geological feature, water erosion, that could theoretically be older doesn't override all the other evidence. But the researchers making these claims aren't being silent. Their ideas are published, debated, discussed. They're invited to conferences. The difference is that most archaeologists remain unconvinced because the preponderance of evidence supports the conventional dating. This is how science works. You don't accept revolutionary claims just because they're interesting or because someone is passionate about them. You require strong evidence. Now, let's talk about something that genuinely does happen in archaeology: the revision of timelines based on new evidence. Pre-Clovis habitation. For decades, the Clovis culture, 13,000 years ago, was considered the earliest widespread evidence of human habitation in the Americas. Earlier dates were deeply skeptical, but evidence accumulated. Monte Verde in Chile, 14,500 years ago, with preserved wooden structure. White Sands footprints in New Mexico, 23,000 years ago. Bluefish Caves in Yukon, 24,000 years old, though this remains debated. Multiple other pre-Clovis sites. The mainstream accepted this evidence, slowly, with appropriate skepticism, but ultimately accepting it because the evidence was solid. Sites were properly excavated. Dating methods were appropriate. Contexts were clear. This demonstrates that archaeology is not locked into rigid ideas. When evidence justifies revision, mainstream archaeology does revive. This is healthy science. Göbekli Tepe. When this site was first excavated and dated to 11,600 years ago, it challenged the theory that monumental architecture required agricultural society. The idea that hunter-gatherers could build something so impressive was revolutionary, but archaeologists embraced, studied it intensively, published about it, revised theories about cultural development. Again, because the evidence was solid. These examples show that archaeology isn't a conspiracy to maintain established narrative. It's genuinely willing to revise when evidence requires. So why do some people insist there's a conspiracy? I think it's partly because the revision process takes time. When you have an idea that seems obviously true, like humans couldn't have done X without advanced technology, and mainstream scientists are skeptical, it feels like suppression. But it's actually just the normal pace of scientific caution and evidence accumulation. It's also partly due to media sensationalism. When a researcher proposes an alternative theory, it gets headlines. Scientists challenge accepted history. When mainstream archaeology re-examines evidence carefully, it gets a dry academic paper that few people read. The sensational stories spread. The careful research doesn't. So people get the impression that there's suppression, when actually there's just a media bias toward novel claims over careful validation. Let me address one more layer of this: the issue of cultural bias in archaeology. Historically, archaeology was Eurocentric. European archaeologists studied their own regions more thoroughly than others. European technological achievements were emphasized. Non-European peoples were sometimes depicted as less advanced, less capable. This was wrong, and modern archaeology is correcting it. Recent decades have seen increased archaeological work in Africa, showing sophisticated ancient civilization, recognition of complex pre-Columbian societies in the Americas, not simple hunter-gatherers, documentation of sophisticated kingdoms and technologies in Asia, the Pacific, everywhere. Increased hiring and leadership of archaeologists from non-European backgrounds. This is genuinely revolutionary scholarship, and it's happening within mainstream archaeology, not as an alternative to it. Some people misunderstand this and think that claims of ancient non-European advancement are being suppressed, but actually, they're being actively investigated and published. What's changing is not that suppressed knowledge is being revealed. It's that archaeology is becoming more rigorous and comprehensive, studying all regions with equal seriousness. For example, recent LiDAR surveys in Central America and Southeast Asia have revealed enormous ancient cities, some with populations rivaling European cities of the same period. These aren't suppressed discoveries. They're actively researched, published in top journals, celebrated as major findings. The reason we didn't know about them before wasn't conspiracy. It was practical limitation. Jungle overgrows sight, making them invisible to older surveying methods. LiDAR technology is recent. Resources for archaeological work are limited. But as technology improves and archaeology becomes better funded and more inclusive, these discoveries are emerging. This is not evidence of lost supercivilization. It's evidence that pre-Columbian and Southeast Asian civilizations were even more sophisticated than we knew. That's remarkable enough without needing impossible claim. Now, let's discuss a phenomenon that's particularly important to understand. Cognitive biases that affect how we interpret evidence. Pattern recognition. Humans are pattern recognizing animals, sometimes to our detriment. We see patterns even where they don't exist. Pareidolia. Worldwide pyramids seem like a pattern, so we invent explanations for why they're similar, but they arose independently for good engineering reasons. Confirmation. Bias. Once we believe something, we tend to seek evidence that confirms it and dismiss evidence that contradicts it. If you believe in a lost civilization, you interpret ambiguous evidence as supporting your belief. An archaeologist might see the same evidence as uncertain or ambiguous. Availability. Heuristic. Sensational stories are more memorable and available to our minds than dry academic papers. So the narrative of suppressed evidence becomes more real to us than the reality of careful scientific work. Conspiracy thinking. Some people are predisposed to see conspiracies. It's a cognitive style. They're not stupid. They might be intelligent and well-meaning, but they interpret evidence through a conspiratorial lens. Distrust of authority. Legitimate distrust of authority, based on history of institutions being wrong or suppressing information, can become generalized cynicism, where all authority is assumed to be lying. Understanding these biases helps us understand why lost civilization theories persist, despite lack of strong evidence. It's not because the theories are right, it's because human psychology makes them appealing. The counterbalance to these biases is training and evidence evaluation, what archaeology actually is, exposure to actual research methods and data, understanding how science self-corrects, willingness to change your mind when evidence warrants it, healthy skepticism that applies equally to mainstream and alternative claims. Let me now explore what I consider genuine mysteries that deserve investigation, that don't have clear explanations, that represent genuine gaps in our knowledge. The Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis. Around 12,800 years ago, Earth suddenly cooled, entering the Younger Dryas period. This lasted about 200 years. The conventional explanation is disruption of ocean currents by meltwater from glaciers, but some researchers propose that a cometary impact or airburst caused the cooling. Evidence includes a thin layer of unusual materials at the right date, widespread wildfires, sudden extinction of large animals, megafauna, magnetic anomalies in some locations. This hypothesis is controversial. Many paleoclimatologists and geologists are skeptical, arguing the evidence is ambiguous or can be explained by other mechanisms, but it's being seriously investigated, with papers published in peer-reviewed journals. Importantly, this isn't suppressed research. It's mainstream research being debated rigorously. Some researchers support it, others don't. This is how science should work. If proven true, this wouldn't support lost civilization. It would support the idea that human development was shaped by catastrophic cosmic events, which is genuinely interesting, but very different from the claim being investigated. The Black Sea Deluge. This is the hypothesis that around 7,600 years ago, Mediterranean water breached the Bosporus, flooding the Black Sea and inundating low-lying settlement. This would have been catastrophic, possibly inspiring flood myths in nearby cultures. This is based on geological evidence of a sudden inflow, sediment changes in the Black Sea, coastal settlement patterns that suggest sudden, displacement flood myths in Mesopotamian cultures. This hypothesis remains debated, but is taken seriously by mainstream geology and archaeology. It's not hidden, it's published and discussed. Again, if true, it wouldn't prove lost civilization. It would show that catastrophic events shaped early human history, which is fascinating, but doesn't require impossible explanation. Unknown, extinction event. We don't fully understand the extinction of megafauna, large animals, in various parts of the world. Theories include climate change from the Younger Dryas hunting by human populations, disease, combination of factors. The fact that we don't have a complete explanation doesn't mean archaeologists are hiding something. It means we're still investigating complex historical events with incomplete evidence, cultural exchange, and independent invention. We still debate the extent of contact between pre-Columbian America and Old World civilization, between early Pacific peoples and other regions. How much cultural similarity resulted from contact, and how much from independent invention. This is genuinely complex. There are some claims of pre-Columbian contact. Some scholars argue for Polynesian contact with South America. Most are skeptical. Clearly independent invention, agriculture, writing, mathematics, uncertain cases, similarities in cultural practices that might be independent or might reflect contact. This is active research, with scholars debating evidence. It's not suppressed, it's investigated. The function of Stonehenge. We still don't fully understand Stonehenge's precise function. Was it a temple, an astronomical observatory, a healing center, a burial ground, a meeting place? Recent research using experimental archaeology, radiocarbon dating, and archaeological surveys is refining our understanding. But mysteries remain. This is healthy. Archaeology should acknowledge what it doesn't know. Ancient navigation. How exactly did Polynesian navigators cross the Pacific without instrument? We have some understanding, reading stars, ocean swells, bird flight patterns, but the full extent of their knowledge and techniques is still being studied. This is remarkable, without requiring impossible explanation. Humans with careful observation and mathematical reason could accomplish sophisticated navigation. These genuine mysteries don't require conspiracy theory or lost civilization. They just require continued research, evidence evaluation, and intellectual humility about what we don't yet know. Now, let me address something important: the role of indigenous knowledge and oral tradition. Western academia has historically dismissed oral traditions as unreliable, preferring written documentation. But this is changing. Indigenous oral traditions often contain accurate historical information. Aboriginal Australian oral tradition describe landscape changes consistent with geological evidence of the last ice. Polynesian oral tradition preserve accurate genealogies and settlement pattern. Indigenous American traditions describe environmental changes consistent with paleoclimatic evidence. African oral traditions have proven accurate for recent centuries when tested against other sources. This doesn't mean oral traditions are always accurate. They're not. They change, blend myths with history, are sometimes forgotten, but they can be valuable sources of information about the past. A responsible archaeology incorporates indigenous knowledge, not uncritically accepting all claims, but treating them seriously as sources of information and perspective. This is happening in modern archaeology. Indigenous communities are increasingly involved in archaeological work in their territory. Their knowledge and perspectives are being incorporated into research. Again, this is not a conspiracy being exposed. It's good scholarship, better scholarship than the Eurocentric archaeology of the past. Let me now discuss something that's often overlooked: the role of chance and luck in archaeological discovery. Many major discoveries have been accidental. The Dead Sea Scrolls were found by a shepherd boy looking for a lost animal. Rosetta Stone was found during military construction. Lucy, the famous early human fossil, was found while paleoanthropologists were surveying. If discoveries depend on chance, then the absence of evidence for something might not mean it doesn't exist. It might just mean we haven't found it yet. This is true, but it cuts both ways. We might not have found evidence of lost civilizations because it's not there. Or we might not have found it yet because we haven't looked in the right place. But we haven't found it yet is not the same as it exists, but is being hidden. And as we survey more land through satellite imagery, LiDAR, etc., we'd expect to find evidence if it existed. The absence of evidence in areas we've surveyed extensively becomes more meaningful. If there were a global advanced civilization 10,000 years ago, we'd expect architectural remains, artifacts, evidence. We find no such evidence in areas surveyed with modern technology. This doesn't prove it didn't exist. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, but it makes it less likely, requires more evidence for the claim to be credible. Now let's talk about what responsible skepticism looks like. Evaluate claims on evidence, not on whether they're sensational. Understand the methods used to evaluate evidence. Consider alternative explanation. Look for peer review and expert consensus, but don't treat it as infallible. Be willing to change your mind when evidence warrants. Understand that absence of evidence, when you'd expect to find evidence if something existed, is meaningful. Recognize that "we don't know" is a legitimate answer, not evidence for your favorite theory. Respect expertise while questioning. Separate what you want to be true from what evidence shows. Remember that real history is often stranger and more wonderful than invented. Alternatives. Following these principles leads to genuine understanding of the past, not conspiracy theories or false certainties. Let's look at one final case study: the claim of ancient global trade networks or a lost global civilization. The evidence cited includes worldwide similarities in architecture, pyramids, step structures, worldwide similarities in mythology, flood myths, creator gods, a few claims of artifacts suggesting contact, like South American artifacts with African or Polynesian characteristics. Counter evidence includes vast differences in technologies and materials between regions, architectural similarities explained by convergent evolution, mythological similarities explained by universal human experiences. Most claims of contact artifacts are disputed or have alternative explanations. Genetic evidence doesn't support widespread pre-Columbian contact. No evidence of a civilization advanced enough to maintain global networks. But here's what's interesting. Even if there were some trade contacts we don't yet know about, that would be revolutionary and exciting, but it wouldn't require lost supercivilizations. It would just mean human maritime technology was more advanced than we thought. Polynesian settlement across the Pacific shows that human maritime technology could accomplish remarkable feats. If there were contact between distant regions, it would be impressive, but not impossible. The historical record actually shows increasing evidence of ancient long-distance contact. Trade routes like the Silk Road connected distant regions. Indian Ocean trade connected Africa, Middle East, India. Southeast Asia Polynesian voyaging networks connected Pacific Islands. Mediterranean trade connected Europe, Africa, Middle East. These are genuine historical achievements that don't require lost civilization. They show that humans at various times and places developed maritime technology and used it to connect with distant peoples. The question isn't whether contact occurred. It clearly did in documented history. But when it began, how extensive it was, and whether it left archaeological evidence we haven't found. This is genuinely interesting research, and archaeologists, historians, and anthropologists are actively investigating it. So, to synthesize everything we've discussed, are archaeologists hiding evidence of lost civilizations? No. But we should understand why this question resonates, what it reveals about human psychology and our relationship with knowledge and authority. The real story of human civilization is complex, surprising, and genuinely wonderful. Ancient peoples were intelligent, capable, creative. Civilizations developed at different times in different places, sometimes independently, sometimes through contact technology, advanced through observation, experimentation, and practical problem solving. Knowledge was lost when civilizations collapsed and wasn't recovered for centuries or millennia. Recovery of knowledge sometimes meant rediscovering what was already known. Archaeological knowledge is incomplete and constantly being revised. Mysteries remain. Genuine gaps exist in our understanding. Future discoveries will continue to surprise us and expand our understanding. This story doesn't require conspiracy theories. It requires respect for our ancestors, understanding of how archaeology works, and intellectual humility about what we don't yet know. The boundaries between knowledge and mystery are real. Acknowledging them, working to expand knowledge into mystery, is how genuine progress is made. Retreating into conspiracy theories when faced with mystery prevents us from doing that work, from making those discoveries, from advancing understanding. I encourage you to engage with archaeology seriously. Read primary sources, visit sites, talk to archaeologists, understand the evidence and methods. You'll find the real story more fascinating than any conspiracy theory. Part 2. Deep dives into archaeological mysteries. Chapter 1. The Sphinx. Age, Purpose, and the Water. Erosion controversy. The Great Sphinx of Giza stands as one of the most recognizable monuments on Earth, a limestone statue with a body of a lion and a human head, measuring approximately 73 meters long and 20 meters high. It guards the Giza Plateau, facing east toward the rising sun, positioned near the pyramids that have captured human imagination for millennia. The conventional dating places the Sphinx's construction during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, around 2500 BCE, making it approximately 4,500 years old. This dating is based on multiple lines of evidence that mainstream Egyptologists find compelling. First, there's the architectural context. The Sphinx sits directly in front of Khafre's mortuary complex, aligned with his pyramid. The causeway leading from the Sphinx temple connects to Khafre's Valley Temple. This isn't coincidental. It's integrated planning, suggesting the Sphinx was built as part of Khafre's funerary complex. Second, there's the iconographic evidence. Ancient Egyptian tradition often depicted pharaohs as sphinxes, combining royal authority with leonine power. The face of the Sphinx, despite erosion, appears to match depictions of Khafre from other statues. Some researchers have used facial recognition software to analyze the resemblance, with mixed results. But the connection between Khafre and Sphinx imagery is well established in Egyptian art. Third, there's the archaeological evidence. The Dream Stele, erected by Thutmose IV around 1400 BCE, sits between the Sphinx's paws. While the stele's hieroglyphics are damaged, they appear to mention Khaf in connection with the Sphinx, possibly referring to Khafre. Additionally, artifacts found in the Sphinx temple and surrounding areas date to Khafre's reign. Fourth, there's the geological context. The Sphinx was carved from the natural limestone bedrock of the Giza Plateau. The same limestone appears in blocks used for Khafre's temple, suggesting coordinated quarrying. The stone removed to create the Sphinx enclosure was likely used in nearby construction projects from the same period. But here's where controversy enters. In the 1990s, geologist Robert Schoch examined the Sphinx enclosure and proposed a revolutionary idea. The erosion patterns on the Sphinx and its enclosure walls weren't caused primarily by wind and sand, as Egyptologists assumed. They were caused by water, specifically by prolonged rainfall. Schoch argued that the vertical erosion patterns visible on the enclosure walls are characteristic of water erosion, not wind erosion. Wind erosion, he noted, creates horizontal patterns as sand scours surfaces. Water erosion creates vertical channels as rain runs down rock. The problem? Egypt hasn't had significant rainfall for thousands of years. The Sahara Desert formed gradually, but the Giza Plateau has been arid since approximately 5000 BC, before the conventional dating of the Sphinx. If the erosion was caused by rainfall, Schoch argued, the Sphinx must be older, possibly much older, perhaps 7000 to 1000 BCE, when the region experienced what's called the African Humid Period, with significantly more rainfall. This hypothesis electrified alternative history community. If the Sphinx was thousands of years older than the pyramid, it would suggest an earlier civilization capable of monumental construction, potentially the lost civilization that alternative researchers have long proposed. But mainstream geologists and Egyptologists have responded with counter-arguments, and understanding these counter-arguments is crucial for evaluating the controversy fairly. First, the erosion might not require rainfall. Some geologists argue that the erosion patterns could result from a combination of factors. Ancient flooding. The Nile's floods occasionally reach higher elevation. Groundwater seepage through the limestone, and chemical weathering. The Giza Plateau limestone is heterogeneous. Different layers have different compositions and weather differently, creating patterns that might look like water erosion but aren't. Second, the limestone layers matter. The Sphinx enclosure cuts through multiple limestone strata, some harder, some soft. Softer layers erode faster than harder layers, creating the stepped, channeled appearance. This differential erosion could create vertical patterns, even with primarily horizontal wind erosion, because softer bands recede while harder bands remain. Third, the archaeological context is overwhelming. Everything around the Sphinx dates to Khafre's, the temples, the artifact, the construction technique, the inscription, all point to the 4th dynasty. For the Sphinx to be older, we'd need to explain why an earlier civilization left no other trace at Giza, why they carved a monument in a style consistent with later Egyptian tradition, and why all associated structures date thousands of years later. Fourth, there's the question of who built it. If the Sphinx dates to 7000 to 1000 BCE, who carved it? At that time, The region was inhabited by Neolithic peoples, hunter-gatherers, and early farmers. We have no evidence of monumental stone carving capability among these peoples. It would require assuming a sophisticated civilization existed that left no other trace, no tools, no settlements, no artifacts, no other monuments. The controversy continues, with new studies periodically addressing the erosion question. Recent geological work has examined the limestone more carefully, the groundwater patterns of the region, and the erosion rates of similar formations. Most mainstream geologists remain unconvinced by Schoch's hypothesis, but the debate is ongoing. What's important to understand is that this is a legitimate scientific debate, not a conspiracy. Schoch's ideas have been published, discussed at conferences, examined by other researchers. He hasn't been silent, he's been challenged, which is how science works. The fact that most experts disagree with him doesn't mean they're suppressing truth. It means they find the evidence unconvincing. And here's what's fascinating. Even if Schoch were right, it wouldn't necessarily prove a lost advanced civilization. It would prove that monumental carving began earlier than we thought in Egypt, which would be revolutionary but not impossible. Early civilizations sometimes accomplished remarkable things. Göbekli Tepe shows hunter-gatherers could create monuments. An earlier sphinx would be surprising, but wouldn't require impossible explanation. The sphinx also presents other mysteries worth examining. Its face has been damaged, possibly deliberately. The nose is missing. The royal beard, fragments of which are in the British Museum, was removed at some point, and erosion has weathered the features significantly. Some speculate the face was recarved, that an earlier leonine face was modified to show a pharaoh's features. This is unprovable with current evidence, but the asymmetry of the face and some unusual proportions have led some to wonder. There's also the question of what lies beneath the Sphinx. Ancient texts mention tunnels and chambers. Seismic surveys in the 1990s detected anomalies that could be cavities or different rock compositions. Drilling found voids in some locations. Some claim these could be hidden chambers with preserved artifacts or records. Egyptian authorities have been cautious about extensive excavation, partly to preserve the monument, and partly because previous excavations have caused damage. This caution has been interpreted by some as evidence of cover-up, but it's more likely conservation concern. The Sphinx has survived 4,500 years or longer. Rushing to dig beneath it could cause irreparable damage. Recent work using non-invasive technology, ground-penetrating radar, muon tomography, is slowly mapping what lies beneath the Giza Plateau. Any significant discoveries will eventually be published. This is how archaeology works. The Sphinx remains mysterious in many ways, but its mysteries don't require lost civilizations or cover-ups. They require continued careful study, technological advances that allow non-invasive investigation, and patience as archaeology slowly reveals its secret. Chapter 2. Göbekli Tepe, the site that changed everything. If there's one archaeological discovery from recent decades that genuinely revolutionized our understanding of human history, it's Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, and it's worth examining in detail because it shows both how revolutionary discoveries are handled in archaeology and how genuine mysteries remain without requiring conspiracy theories. Göbekli Tepe, Turkish for Potbelly Hill, was first surveyed in the 1960s when it was dismissed as a medieval cemetery. Stone fragments on the surface were assumed to be Byzantine or Islamic. It wasn't until 1994 that German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, recognizing the site's potential, began systematic excavation. What he found transformed our understanding of prehistoric human capability. The site contains multiple circular enclosures, each consisting of massive limestone pillars arranged in circles, with two larger pillars in the center. The largest pillars reach 5 to 6 meters in height and weigh up to 20 tons. They're T-shaped with flat tops that some interpret as stylized human figures, the horizontal piece representing a head, the vertical piece a body. Most remarkably, the pillars are decorated with intricate carving: animals, foxes, boars, lions, snakes, scorpions, vultures, aurochs, abstract symbols, and occasional human figures. The carving is sophisticated, showing careful observation of animal anatomy and skilled stoneworking. Radiocarbon dating places the oldest structures at approximately 9600-9500 BCE, nearly 12,000 years ago. This makes Göbekli Tepe roughly 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramid. Here's why this is revolutionary. At 9600 BCE, according to everything we thought we knew, humans in this region were hunter-gatherers. Agriculture hadn't developed yet. The domestication of plants and animals in the Fertile Crescent began around 9500 9000 BCE, roughly contemporary with or slightly after Göbekli Tepe's construction. The conventional model of human development went hunter-gatherers, agriculture, settled villages, surplus production, specialization, monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe inverts this. Here were hunter-gatherers building massive monuments before they had permanent settlements or agricultural surplus. This challenges fundamental assumptions. How did people without agriculture, without surplus grain to feed construction workers, organize the labor to quarry, transport, and erect 20-ton pillars? How did they develop the artistic tradition, the symbolic vocabulary, the engineering knowledge? Why would nomadic hunters build permanent monuments? Schmidt proposed a revolutionary interpretation. Göbekli Tepe was a religious center, a pilgrimage site where scattered hunter-gatherer bands gathered for rituals. The construction wasn't done by a settled population, but by groups coming together periodically, contributing labor as part of religious obligation. Even more provocatively, Schmidt suggested that the need to build and maintain sites like Göbekli Tepe might have driven the development of agriculture. Building monuments required people to stay in one place longer, to coordinate activities, to develop food production, to feed workers. Religion, in this interpretation, drove civilization rather than following it. This hypothesis remains debated. Not all archaeologists agree with Schmidt's interpretation of the site as purely religious. Some suggest it might have had astronomical function, with the pillars aligned to celestial events. Others propose it was a meeting place for social events like trade, marriages, or conflict resolution. But here's what's crucial. Mainstream archaeology embraced Göbekli Tepe. Schmidt published in prestigious journals. The site attracted international attention, funding, researchers from multiple countries. Far from suppressing this revolutionary discovery, the archaeological community celebrated it. This happened because the evidence was solid. The excavation was methodical. The dating was rigorous. The artifacts were well documented. Schmidt didn't claim it was built by a lost super-civilization. He interpreted it within the context of what we know about Neolithic people, just with enhanced respect for their capability. The discovery forced revision of theories about human development, and that revision happened. Textbooks were updated. Conferences were held. New research projects were funded to look for similar sites, and similar sites have been found. Karahan Tepe, about 35 kilometers from Göbekli Tepe, appears to be contemporary or slightly older, with similar T-shaped pillars. Other sites in the region, Navali Chori, Kayonu, Hamzan Tepe, show related tradition. The picture emerging is of a widespread symbolic culture in pre-agricultural Anatolia, a culture sophisticated enough to build monuments and create complex art. Göbekli Tepe also has mysteries that remain unsolved. Why was it buried? Around 8000 BCE, the site was deliberately backfilled with rubble, dirt, and debris. The enclosures were systematically filled in, carefully preserving the pillars beneath. This burial actually preserved the site remarkably well. It's why the carvings remain so clear after 12,000 years. But why bury it? Did the builders want to preserve it for future generations? Was it a ritual closure, killing the sacred site when its purpose was fulfilled? Did social changes make the site obsolete? We don't know. What do the carvings mean? The animals depicted are mostly dangerous creatures, predators, and venomous animals, rather than the prey animals hunter-gatherers depended on for food. Is this depicting fears, spiritual guardians, totemic ancestors? The symbols might represent early proto-writing, clan signs, or purely decorative motif. Without written records, we can only speculate. Was there astronomical alignment? Some researchers claim the pillars align with celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, star rising. Others are skeptical, noting that with enough pillars in various positions, some will align with something. The debate continues. What was daily life like at the site? We've found no evidence of permanent habitation, no living quarters, no domestic debris, but people must have stayed there during construction and ceremony. Where did they live? What did they eat? How was the labor organized? Recent excavations continue to reveal new information. Geophysical surveys suggest that Only about 5% of the site has been excavated. There may be 20 or more additional enclosures buried beneath the hilltop. Each excavation season brings new discoveries, new carving, new puzzles. Göbekli Tepe demonstrates that archaeology is genuinely revolutionary when evidence warrants it. It shows that our ancestors were more capable than we assumed, that symbolic thought and monumental construction preceded agriculture. It's a reminder that history can surprise us, but it doesn't support lost civilization theory. The builders weren't a technologically advanced society. They had no metal tools, no writing, no wheels. They accomplished their work with stone tools, human labor, and sophisticated organization. That's impressive enough without embellishment. Chapter 3. The Americas Before Columbus. What we know and what we're still learning. Few areas of archaeology have been revised more dramatically in recent decades than our understanding of pre-Columbian America. The picture that emerges is far more complex, more sophisticated, and more populous than older narratives suggested, and this revision has happened through mainstream archaeology, not alternative theory. Let's start with population estimate. When Europeans arrived in 1492, how many people lived in the Americas? Estimates have ranged wildly. Early 20th century scholars, influenced by colonial perspectives that depicted indigenous peoples as primitive and sparse, estimated perhaps 8-15 million people in all of North and South America combined. But modern research using multiple methods, archaeological site survey, analysis of European disease spread pattern, examination of Spanish colonial record, ecological carrying capacity model suggests dramatically higher number, 50-100 million people, possibly more. The population collapsed catastrophic after contact, primarily due to epidemic diseases like smallpox, measles, typhus, and influenza. Indigenous peoples had no immunity to these Eurasian diseases. Mortality rates reached 90% or higher in some regions. By the time most European settlement occurred, the population had already crashed. Europeans encountered a landscape that seemed empty, virgin wilderness, but was actually a landscape recently depopulated by disease. Archaeological evidence shows that many areas described by early settlers as uninhabited wilderness had been densely settled just decades earlier. This revised understanding isn't alternative history, it's mainstream archaeology and history, published in academic journals and increasingly taught in textbooks. It comes from careful analysis of evidence, archaeological sites, colonial records, disease spread modeling, genetic study. Now let's look at specific civilizations and what we've learned. The Maya. The Maya were never lost. Their descendants number millions today. But the complexity of classic Maya civilization, roughly 250-900 CE, continues to amaze archaeologists. Maya cities rivaled contemporary European cities in population. Tikal, at its height, may have had 200,000 inhabitants in its greater metropolitan area. Calakmul, El Mirador, Caracol were similarly substantial. Maya achievements included sophisticated mathematics with a true zero concept, independently invented, accurate astronomical observation and eclipse prediction, complex calendar system, tracking multiple cycles, fully developed writing system, only recently deciphered, monumental architecture, including pyramids, palaces, ball courts, advanced agricultural technique, including raised fields and terrace farming, extensive trade networks spanning Mesoamerica. Recent LIDAR surveys have revolutionized our understanding of Maya settlement pattern. LIDAR, light detection and ranging, uses laser pulses from aircraft to penetrate jungle canopy and map ground surface. Applied to Maya regions in Guatemala, Belize, and Mexico, it revealed tens of thousands of previously unknown structures, extensive road networks connecting cities' agricultural infrastructure far more extensive than visible ruin, suggested fortification indicating endemic warfare, populations perhaps 2 to 3 times higher than previous estimate. These discoveries weren't suppressed, they were celebrated, published in Nature and Science, reported in major media. They show archaeology advancing through new technology, revising understanding based on evidence. The Maya collapse, the decline of classic Maya civilization around 800-1000 CE, remains debated. Factors include drought, exacerbated by deforestation, warfare, and political instability, overpopulation, and resource depletion, disease. The collapse was neither sudden nor complete. Some cities survived while others were abandoned. Some regions recovered while others didn't. This complexity is exactly what we'd expect from real history. Not a single dramatic event, but a complicated process involving multiple factors affecting different regions differently. The Aztec, Mexico. When the Spanish arrived in 1519, Tenochtitlan was one of the largest cities in the world, with perhaps 200,000-300,000 inhabitants. Built on an island in Lake Texcoco, connected to the mainland by causeways featuring massive pyramids, palaces, markets, and elaborate water management systems. It astonished the conquistadors. The Aztec Empire controlled much of central Mexico through a combination of military conquest and tributary relationship. Their achievements included engineering, causeways, aqueducts, chinampas, floating gardens, agriculture, intensive cultivation, feeding massive population, trade, markets like Tlatelolco, where tens of thousands traded daily, art and craftsmanship, featherwork, goldsmithing, stone carving, administrative systems, tribute records, census counts, legal codes education, schools teaching history, religion, practical skills. Aztec society had problems too. Human sacrifice, endemic warfare, social stratification, imperial exploitation. History includes both achievements and atrocities. Archaeological work in Mexico City, built on Tenochtitlan's ruins, constantly uncovers new evidence. The Templo Mayor excavation revealed the main temple's successive building phases, sacrificial remains, offerings from across the empire. Each construction project in the city center potentially uncovers artifacts. Again, none of this is hidden. The National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City is one of the world's great museums, celebrating pre-Columbian achievement. Archaeological research continues, funded by Mexican government and international collaborators, published in Spanish and English, accessible to scholars worldwide. The Inca. The Inca Empire was the largest in pre-Columbian America, stretching 4,000 kilometers along the Andes, from Ecuador to Chile. At its height in the early 1500s, it encompassed perhaps 10 to 112 million people. Inca achievements included the Capac Ñan, a 30,000-plus kilometer road network through some of the world's most difficult terrain, Machu Picchu, the famous citadel showcasing sophisticated stone construction, agricultural terracing, transforming steep slopes into productive farmland, hydraulic engineering, irrigation system, fountains, water channeling, quipus, knotted string recording system, still not fully deciphered, Mita labor system, organizing massive public work, freeze-drying food preservation at high-altitude medical knowledge, including surgery and trepanation. The Inca built their empire without the wheel, impractical in Andean terrain, without writing in the traditional sense, though quipus encoded information, without iron tool. They worked bronze and did most construction with stone, copper, and human labor. The precision of Inca stonework genuinely impressive. At sites like Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo, massive polygonal stones fit together without mortar, with joins so tight that knife blades can't penetrate. How did they achieve this? Research suggests careful shaping with stone and bronze tools, using abrasives and patience, repeated fitting, marking high spots, grinding down, refitting, possibly using ramp, levers, and coordinated labor to position stone. Experiments have shown these methods work, though they're time-consuming. The Spanish conquest destroyed much Inca knowledge. They melted gold artifacts, burned quipus as idolatrous, disrupted social structures that preserved tradition. But Spanish chroniclers recorded much information, and archaeological research continues to reveal more. The Mississippi Mound Builder. In what's now the eastern United States, indigenous peoples built thousands of earthen mounds, some burial mounds, some platform mounds supporting temples or elite residences, some effigy mounds shaped like animals. The largest site, Cahokia, near modern St. Louis, was a city that, at its height around 1100 CE, had 10,000, 20,000 inhabitants, making it larger than contemporary London. Monk's Mound, the central platform, contains more earth than the Great Pyramid contains stone. For years, European American scholars denied that indigenous peoples built these mounds. They attributed them to lost races, ancient visitors, anyone but the ancestors of Native Americans. This was racist pseudo-archaeology, and it persisted into the 20th century. Modern archaeology has definitively established that indigenous peoples built the mounds over thousands of years, with different cultures developing different traditions. Poverty Point, 1700 to 1100 BCE, was an early complex site. Hopewell cultures, 200 BCE, 500 CE, built elaborate burial mounds. Mississippian cultures, 800, 1600 CE, built platform mound cities like Cahokia. The denial of indigenous achievement was the real cover-up in American archaeology, not hiding evidence of lost civilization, but denying credit to the civilizations that actually existed. Now let's address the pre-Clovis question. When did humans first arrive in the Americas? For decades, the Clovis first model dominated. Clovis culture, identified by distinctive stone spear points, appeared around 13,000 years ago and was assumed to represent the first American entering going through the ice-free corridor between ice sheets in Canada. But evidence accumulated for earlier habitation. Monte Verde, Chile, a site with preserved wooden structures, stone tools, and plant remains dated to 14,500 years ago, 1,500 years before Clovis, and located at the southern tip of South America, far from the supposed entry. White Sands, New Mexico. Human footprints preserved in lake sediment, dated by multiple methods to 21,000 to 23,000 years ago, far earlier than any previous evidence. Bluefish caves, Yukon, stone tools, and modified animal bones, possibly 24,000 years old, though dates are debated. Meadowcroft Rock Shelter, Pennsylvania. Artifacts potentially 16,000, 19,000 years old. Genetic evidence also supports earlier entry. The genetic diversity among indigenous American populations suggests they've been here longer than the Clovis first model allowed. The archaeological community initially resisted these claims. Appropriate scientific skepticism for extraordinary claims. But as evidence accumulated from multiple sites using multiple dating methods, the consensus shifted. Most archaeologists now accept pre-Clovis habitation, though debates continue about exactly when and how people first arrived. This shift demonstrates that archaeology revises its models when evidence accumulates. It's not fast. The pre-Clovis debate took decades, but revision happened. What enabled earlier arrival? Possibly coastal migration, following the Pacific coast during the Ice Age, when lower sea levels exposed land and kelp forests provided food sources. Coastal sites from that era are now submerged, making evidence hard to find, but the route is plausible. All of this is ongoing research, published in journals, debated at conferences, taught in universities. It's revolutionary in implication, but normal in process. Chapter 4. Underwater Mysteries. What lies beneath the waves rising sea level. Since the last ice age have submerged vast areas that were once dry land, potentially including evidence of human habitation. This is a genuine frontier of archaeological research, with real mysteries and real discovery. During the last glacial maximum, roughly 26,000, 19,000 years ago, sea levels were 120, 130 meters lower than today. Vast areas of continental shelf were exposed. The North Sea was dry land, Doggerland. Indonesia was connected to mainland Asia, Sundaland. Alaska was connected to Siberia, Beringia. Australia was connected to New Guinea, Sahel. As ice sheets melted, these areas flooded. Any human sites on them are now underwater. Difficult to find, difficult to excavate, often buried under sediment. This is not a cover-up. This is a practical limitation of underwater archaeology. It's expensive, technically challenging, and requires specialized equipment and training. Only recently has technology allowed systematic survey of submerged landscape. What have we found? Doggerland. The North Sea basin between Britain and continental Europe was a rich landscape during the early Holocene. Fishing trawlers have brought up bone tools, human remains, mammoth tusks. Geophysical surveys have mapped river valley, hills, and lake beds beneath the wave. It's clear that people lived there and that their settlements are now underwater. Research projects are working to understand Doggerland better. Seismic surveys map ancient landscape. Coring extracts sediments for analysis. Occasional artifacts appear. It's slow work, but it's happening within mainstream archaeology. Cosquer Cave, France, an underwater cave with Paleolithic paintings accessed through a tunnel, now 37 meters below sea level. The paintings date to 27,000, 19,000 years ago, when sea levels were lower and the cave accessible from land. It demonstrates that human sites from the Ice Age exist underwater. Black Sea settlement. In shallower areas of the Black Sea, archaeologists have found evidence of submerged human settlement, possibly inundated, when the Mediterranean broke through the Bosphorus. Research continued with remote-operated vehicles, ROVs, and divers documenting sites. Pavlopetri, Greece, a Bronze Age city submerged just 3 to 4 meters offshore, systematically mapped using photogrammetry. Streets, buildings, graves, a complete city underwater, preserved by submergence. Alexandria's submerged royal quarters. The ancient harbor of Alexandria, including parts of the Ptolemaic royal district and the legendary Lighthouse of Alexandria site, is now underwater due to earthquake subsidence and sea level change. Underwater archaeologists have mapped and excavated these areas, recovering statues, inscriptions, architectural elements. These are real discoveries, made by real archaeologists, published in real journals. They demonstrate that submerged archaeology is a viable field, producing genuine knowledge. Now, what about claims of submerged pyramids, cities, and structures that might support lost civilization theories? The Yonaguni Monument. Off the coast of Yonaguni Island, Japan, divers found what appears to be massive stone terraces, stairways, and platforms underwater. When first reported in the 1980s, some claimed it was a human-made structure, possibly from a lost civilization. Geologists who've examined it mostly conclude it's natural. The sandstone and mudstone in the area naturally fractures along perpendicular plane, creating step-like formation. Similar formations exist above water on Yonaguni. The terraces align with natural bedding plane. The pathways follow natural fracture pattern. This doesn't mean it's definitively natural. Some features remain ambiguous, and limited access makes thorough study difficult. But the most likely explanation is natural geology that happens to look artificial. The Bimini Road. Off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas, divers found what appears to be a pavement of rectangular stone blocks. Some claimed it was a remnant of Atlantis. Geological examination suggests it's natural beach rock formation. Beach rock forms when sand and shell fragments cement together in the intertidal zone. When fractured, it creates rectangular patterns along natural joint planes. Similar formations exist throughout the Caribbean. The block don't show tool mark. There are no associated artifacts. Again, it's not 100% proven natural, but the geological explanation is simpler and better supported than human construction. The Gulf of Khambhat. In 2001, oceanographers surveying the Gulf of Khambhat, formerly Gulf of Cambay, off western India, reported sonar images of what appeared to be submerged structure. Dredging brought up artifacts, including pottery and carved stone. This discovery was announced with claims of a 9,500-year-old city, predating known Indian civilizations by millennia. However, critical examination raised questions. The sonar images are ambiguous and could show natural formation. The artifacts were dredged, not excavated in situ, so their original context is unknown. Radiocarbon dating of recovered wood was controversial. No systematic excavation has been conducted. The site hasn't been peer-reviewed by independent marine archaeologists. This doesn't mean there's nothing there. There might be, but the evidence presented so far doesn't meet archaeological standards. More rigorous investigation is needed before conclusions can be drawn. What's important to understand is that underwater archaeology is a real field with real standards. When sites are properly investigated, like Pavlopetri or the Alexandria harbors, they produce solid evidence that withstands scrutiny. When sites are announced sensationally, without proper investigation, like Khambhat, the evidence often doesn't hold up. Chapter 5. Ancient Precision. How did they achieve it? One of the most common arguments for lost advanced technology concerns the precision of ancient construction. How did ancient peoples achieve such accurate cuts, such perfect fits, such remarkable alignments without modern tools? Let's examine this carefully, looking at specific examples and what we know about ancient techniques. The Great Pyramid. The base of the Great Pyramid is level to within 2.1 centimeters across 230 meters, a precision of less than 0.01%. The sides align to the cardinal directions within 3 arc minutes, 0.05 degrees. The blocks fit with minimal gaps, some barely visible. This seems impossible with primitive tools, but let's consider how it might have been done. Leveling. Ancient Egyptians could use water as a leveling tool. By creating shallow trenches filled with water, they could establish a perfectly level reference across large distances. Water always finds a level surface. By marking water height on posts along the trenches, they could transfer level points across the building site. This technique requires no advanced technology, just water, trenches, and careful observation. It's time-consuming, but achieves remarkable precision. Cardinal alignment. The Egyptians could align to the cardinal directions using astronomical observation. One method: observe a northern star at its eastern and western extremes as it circles the celestial pole. The bisector of these observations gives true north. Another method: observe the rising or setting point of specific stars that rise due east or set due west at certain times of year. Egyptian astronomical knowledge was sophisticated. They created accurate calendars and tracked stellar events for religious purposes. Using this knowledge for construction alignment is entirely plausible. Stone cutting. Egyptian quarries show evidence of the techniques used. Workers cut channels around blocks using copper chisels with sand abrasive, or by pounding with dolerite balls, a stone harder than granite. They inserted wooden wedges into the channels and wetted them. As wood expanded, it cracked the stone along the desired line. These methods work. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated them. They're slow, labor-intensive, but effective. Stone fitting. To fit blocks precisely, workers could grind surfaces, using sand abrasive until they matched. They could apply red ochre to one surface, press it against the mating surface, and grind down the high points, revealed by transferred ochre. Repeated iterations would produce increasingly precise fits. Again, slow and labor-intensive, but within the capability of patient workers with time and motivation. Inca stonework at Sacsayhuaman. The massive polygonal blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, fit together with remarkable precision, despite their irregular shape. How? Evidence suggests blocks were roughly shaped at the quarry at the construction site. Masons refined the fit through repeated grinding and checking. Each stone was fit to its specific neighbors, which is why no two stones are identical. The polygonal shapes actually provide structural stability. The irregular shapes interlock, resisting earthquake displacement. The technique is brilliant engineering, but it's not impossible. It requires skilled mason, abrasive material, enormous patience, and a workforce willing to spend days or weeks perfecting a single joint. We know they had the patience because the Inca had the Maita labor system. Communities contributed labor to state projects as a form of taxation. A single construction project might draw on thousands of workers over years or decades. Pumapunku, Bolivia. This site features H-shaped blocks with very regular cuts, leading some to claim machine tools were used. But examination showed the blocks are made of red sandstone and andesite. Neither impossibly hard tool marks consistent with stone pounders are visible. The precision is often exaggerated in photograph. Close examination shows rough surfaces and imperfect angles. The blocks aren't actually that precise. They're impressive for handwork, but not impossible. The site was damaged by stone robbing. Locals took blocks for building material. Dynamic blasting, ill-advised early excavation, and weathering. Much of what remains is fragmentary, making reconstruction speculative. Some alternative researchers have made claims about Pumapunku that don't withstand scrutiny, like claims of laser-cut precision that examination doesn't support. Baalbek, Lebanon. The Roman temple complex at Baalbek features massive stone blocks, including the famous Tralathon, 3 stones each, weighing approximately 800 tons, and even larger stones still in the quarry, including the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, approximately 1,000 tons, and an even larger stone, discovered in 2014, approximately 1,250 tons. How did Romans move 800-ton stone? They had sophisticated engineering, levers, rollers, ramps, pulleys, capstans, and massive coordinated labor forces. Roman engineering texts describe techniques for moving heavy objects. The stones at Baalbek are impressive, but they're Roman work, documented in historical sources, using known Roman construction techniques from a period when Roman engineering was at its peak. The quarry stones that were never moved might represent ambition exceeding capability, projects abandoned when they proved too difficult, or when priorities changed. This happens in construction projects. It doesn't require lost technology. The fundamental point is this: ancient precision was achieved through time, patience, skill, and ingenuity, not advanced technology. Ancient peoples had the same intelligence we do. They observed carefully, experimented, refined techniques over generations. They had something we often lack: time. A project that took decades was acceptable. Individual workers might spend entire careers perfecting specific skills. When we say, how could they do this without modern technology, we're often underestimating both their intelligence and their patience. Chapter 6. Ancient Astronomy. What did they know? Ancient peoples worldwide demonstrated sophisticated astronomical knowledge, tracking the sun, moon, planets, and stars, predicting eclipses, creating calendars, aligning structures to celestial events. This knowledge sometimes seems impossibly advanced. Let's examine what they actually knew and how they knew it. The Maya. Maya astronomers achieved remarkable accuracy through systematic observation over centuries. They tracked Venus with obsessive precision, its appearance as morning star, its disappearance behind the sun, its reappearance as evening star, its complete 584-day cycle. The Dresden Codex contains Venus tables, accurate to within 2 hours over 500 years. They predicted solar and lunar eclipse using tables derived from long-term observation. They didn't understand the physics, the moon's shadow crossing Earth, but they'd identified the patterns that produced eclipses. They created multiple interlocking calendars, the 260-day Tzolk'in the 365-day Hob, the long count tracking days since a mythological creation. These systems allowed precise dating of events and prediction of astronomical occurrences. How did they achieve this? Systematic observation over centuries, recorded in books, most destroyed by Spanish. Mathematical skills, including place value notation and zero, a cultural priority placed on astronomical knowledge for religious and agricultural purposes. This is impressive without being impossible. Any culture that systematically observes the sky for centuries will accumulate accurate knowledge about astronomical patterns. Ancient Egypt. Egyptians aligned the pyramid to the cardinal direction using astronomical observation. They tracked the heliacal rising of Syria, its first appearance before sunrise after being invisible, which coincided with the Nile flood and marked their new year. The pyramid text and later sources show sophisticated understanding of stellar cycles. The imperishable stars, circumpolar stars that never set, were associated with eternal life. The unwearied stars, planet, were tracked carefully. Again, this comes from systematic observation, not impossible technology. Stonehenge, the alignment of Stonehenge. 2. The summer solstice sunrise and winter solstice sunset along the same axis demonstrates astronomical awareness. The station stones may mark lunar standstill positions. Various researchers have proposed additional alignments, though some are controversial. What's clear is that Neolithic Britons understood the solar cycle well enough to align massive stones to solstice positions. This requires careful observation over years, but no advanced technology. Nabta Playa. This site in the Egyptian Sahara, dating to around 5000–4000 BCE, includes stone alignments that may track the summer solstice and the rising points of certain stars. If the alignments are intentional, debated, it represents astronomical knowledge among early cattle herders. The Antikythera mechanism. This ancient Greek device deserves special attention. Discovered in a shipwreck dated to around 70 to 60 BCE, it's a complex geared mechanism that modeled astronomical cycles. When X-rayed and analyzed, researchers found multiple interlocking bronze gears, at least 30. Mechanisms tracking the sun, moon, and possibly planet. A dial predicting eclipses using the Saros cycle, possible tracking of the Olympic Games cycle. This seems impossibly advanced, a mechanical computer from ancient Greece. But consider the context. Greek astronomers had sophisticated mathematical models of celestial mechanics. They understood the ratios between various cycles. They had a tradition of mechanical ingenuity. Archimedes reportedly built mechanical devices, and Hellenistic engineers created automata, water clocks, and other complex mechanisms. The Antikythera mechanism is remarkable, but it's the product of known Greek intellectual tradition, not evidence of lost super technology. It shows that ancient capabilities exceeded what we sometimes assume, but within the context of documented Greek science and engineering. The key insight from all these examples: astronomical knowledge doesn't require advanced technology. It requires systematic observation over long periods, years to centuries. Recording system, writing, monuments, oral tradition, mathematical tools for pattern recognition, cultural motivation to prioritize astronomical observation. Ancient peoples had all of these. Their astronomical achievements are impressive, but not impossible. Chapter 7. The question of ancient maps. Some of the most persistent alternative history claims concern ancient maps that supposedly show geographical knowledge impossible for their time, coastlines not yet explored, Antarctica without ice, accurate longitude before the chronometer. Let's examine the most famous claim, the Piri Reis map, 1513. This Ottoman map, drawn by Admiral Piri Reis, shows the Atlantic Ocean with the coasts of Europe, Africa, and South America. Some claim the southern portion shows Antarctica without ice, suggesting it derives from maps made when Antarctica was ice-free millions of years ago, or when ancient people somehow knew Antarctica's coastline beneath the ice. But cartographic historians have thoroughly analyzed this map. The Antarctica portion actually shows South America, distorted and rotated to fit on the parchment Piri Reis. Noted his sources: Portuguese and Spanish maps from Columbus's era. Older Arabic map, a map allegedly from Columbus himself. The coastline corresponds to known South American features, albeit inaccurately. There's no need to invoke Antarctica. The map makes sense as a compilation of contemporary knowledge with typical period distortion. The Zeno map, 1558. This map of the North Atlantic, published in Venice, shows islands that don't exist and has been claimed to show knowledge of lands before their official discovery. But analysis suggests it's either a forgery or a highly inaccurate compilation riddled with error. The mysterious islands are likely distortions of known places or imaginative additions common in period cartography. The Orontius Phineas map, 1531. This world map shows a southern continent labeled Terra Australis. Some claim it shows Antarctica with accurate coastline, but Terra Australis was a hypothetical continent that European mapmakers included on maps for centuries before Antarctica discovered. They assumed a southern landmass must exist to balance northern land. The coastline shown is imaginary, based on theory rather than observation, and doesn't actually match Antarctica when compared carefully. The Boache map, 1737. French cartographer Philippe Boache showed Antarctica as two separate landmasses, which some note resembles what Antarctica looks like under the ice. Is this evidence of ancient knowledge? More likely, it's a coincidence. Boache was showing a hypothetical Terra Australis based on theories of his time. The two landmass depiction was one of many speculative representations. It happens to somewhat resemble Antarctica's sub-ice topography, but Boache had no way of knowing that. He was speculating. The fundamental problem with impossible map claim. They typically rely on selective interpretation. Maps that seem to show impossible knowledge are cherry-picked. Maps from the same period full of obvious errors are ignored. Features are interpreted to match modern knowledge when alternative interpretations exist. The actual geography of depicted coastlines often doesn't match what's claimed when examined carefully. Ancient and medieval mapmakers weren't accurate by modern standards. They combined real observations with speculation, legend, and theory. Finding features that vaguely resemble undiscovered land doesn't prove ancient exploration. It reflects the nature of pre-modern cartography. Chapter 8. Genetic Evidence and Human Migration. Modern genetics has revolutionized our understanding of human prehistory, providing evidence independent of archaeological artifacts. What has genetic research revealed, and does it support or contradict lost civilization theories? DNA analysis can track human migrations through mitochondrial DNA inherited from mothers, Y chromosome DNA inherited through fathers, autosomal DNA, mixed inheritance from both parents, ancient DNA extracted from archaeological remains, key findings relevant to civilization theories. Out of Africa, genetic evidence confirms that all non-African humans descend from a population that left Africa roughly 60,000, 80,000 years ago. This small founding population, perhaps a few thousand individuals, colonized the rest of the world. Subsequent migrations and mixtures complicated the picture, but the basic pattern is clear. Humans originated in Africa and spread outward. Neanderthal and Denisovan interbreeding. Non-African humans carry 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA, indicating interbreeding, when modern humans encountered Neanderthals in Europe and Western Asia. East Asian and Oceanian populations additionally carry Denisovan DNA, indicating interbreeding with this other archaic human group. This is fascinating. Humans interbred with other human species, but it doesn't support lost civilization theory. Neanderthals and Denisovans weren't advanced civilization. They were archaic humans with different capability. Peopling of the Americas. Genetic studies suggest Native Americans derived primarily from a Siberian population that crossed Beringia. This migration occurred roughly 15,000 to 20,000 years ago, earlier than Clovis, supporting pre-Clovis archaeology. There may have been multiple migration waves. Limited gene flow with Oceanian populations suggests some contact, but Native American genetics are predominantly East Asian in origin. Importantly, genetic studies don't support claims of ancient Egyptian, Phoenician, or other Old World peoples colonizing the Americas. Native American genetics are distinctly derived from Siberian, East Asian population, with minimal Old World admixture before Columbus. Pacific settlement. Genetic studies confirm the archaeological picture of Pacific settlement. Polynesian peoples expanded from Southeast Asia through the Pacific over thousands of years, reaching remote islands including Hawaii, Easter Island, and New Zealand within the past 1,000 to 2,000 years. There's genetic evidence of limited contact between Polynesians and South Americans, probably Polynesians reaching South America, not the reverse. But this represents contact between known population, not evidence of lost civilization. What genetic evidence does not show? No evidence of a lost advanced civilization, distinct from known human population. No genetic discontinuity that would suggest a catastrophic loss of an advanced people. No evidence of global genetic mix that would indicate a worldwide prehistoric civilization. No ancient human population, significantly different from expected. Based on conventional archaeology, genetics provides an independent check on archaeological and historical claim. It generally confirms the mainstream picture while adding complexity and detail. It doesn't support lost civilization theory. Chapter 9, Catastrophism and the Younger Dryas I area, where genuine scientific debate exists, concerns catastrophism. The idea that sudden catastrophic events have shaped human and geological history more than gradual processes. The Younger Dryas, approximately 12,900, 11,700 years ago, was a sudden return to near glacial conditions after a period of warming. It lasted about 1,200 years and coincided with significant events: megafauna extinctions, mammoths, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats, changes in human cultures, end of Clovis culture in North America, climate disruption affecting early agricultural experiments. The conventional explanation, meltwater from retreating ice sheets disrupted Atlantic Ocean circulation, triggering cooling through feedback effect. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes an alternative trigger: a comet impact or airburst over the Laurentide ice sheet, causing widespread fires, triggering climatic cooling, and contributing to megafauna extinction. Evidence cited includes a black mat layer at many sites dated to the onset of the Younger Dryas, containing unusual materials, nanodiamonds, tiny diamonds that can form under impact conditions, elevated platinum and iridium associated with cosmic impact, magnetic spherules, and other impact indicate evidence of widespread wildfire. The Carolina Bays, elliptical depressions along the U.S. Atlantic coast, proposed as impact-related features. This hypothesis remains controversial. Critics argue the supposed impact markers are found inconsistently or can be explained by other processes. The nanodiamonds might be contamination or misidentification. Carolina Bays have been forming throughout the Holocene, not just at the Younger Dryas boundary. No impact crater has been identified. The extinction pattern doesn't match what would be expected from an impact. The debate is ongoing, with papers published arguing both sides. It's being addressed through normal scientific processes, not suppressed. What's important, even if the impact hypothesis is correct, it doesn't support lost civilization. The hypothesis concerns a natural catastrophe affecting hunter-gatherers and megafauna, not the destruction of an advanced global civilization. Some alternative researchers have combined the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis with lost civilization theory, proposing that an advanced civilization was destroyed by the impact. But this goes far beyond the scientific hypothesis. The impact hypothesis doesn't claim civilization was destroyed. It claims climate was disrupted and animals went extinct. The lack of any evidence for an advanced civilization, no ruins, no artifacts, no genetic signature, no written records, no continuous traditions, remains the fatal flaw in lost civilization theory. A catastrophe might destroy a civilization's physical infrastructure, but it wouldn't eliminate all evidence everywhere. Chapter 10, The Psychology of Mystery. Understanding why people believe in lost civilizations requires understanding human psychology, how we process information, what biases affect our reasoning, why certain ideas are appealing. Pattern recognition. Humans are pattern-seeking animals. This trait was evolutionarily adaptive. Recognizing patterns, predator tracks, seasonal changes, social dynamics, aided survival. But it also leads us to see patterns where none exist. When people look at worldwide pyramid, worldwide flood myth, worldwide astronomical alignment, they see a pattern that seems to demand explanation. A lost civilization connecting these disparate phenomena provides a satisfying explanation, but the pattern might be illusory, coincidences, or it might have simpler explanation. Convergent evolution, universal human experiences. Our pattern recognition instinct pushes us toward explanation, even when evidence is insufficient. Agency detection. Related to pattern recognition is our tendency to attribute events to intentional agents rather than natural processes or chance. If a formation looks artificial, we assume someone built it. If knowledge seems sophisticated, we assume advanced teachers. This bias served us well in social environments where understanding others' intentions mattered, but it leads us astray when we attribute agency to natural formation, coincidences, or the natural cleverness of ancient peoples. Narrative thinking. Humans understand the world through stories. A narrative about a lost advanced civilization destroyed by catastrophe is compelling. It has drama, mystery, tragedy. The mainstream archaeological narrative of gradual human human development through trial and error is less emotionally compelling, even if more accurate. We're drawn to good stories, and lost civilization theories tell great stories. Distrust of authority. Many people distrust academic institutions, government, established authority. This distrust has some foundation. Institutions have been wrong before, have suppressed inconvenient truth, have served powerful interests, but generalized distrust becomes problematic when applied indiscriminately. The fact that authorities can be wrong doesn't mean they're always wrong. The fact that cover-ups have happened doesn't mean this particular claim is being covered up. Healthy skepticism evaluates specific claims on specific evidence rather than assuming authorities are lying because they're authority. Desire for wonder. The world can seem mundane, explained, demystified. Lost civilizations restore wonder. They suggest hidden depth, secret knowledge, mysteries yet to be revealed. This desire is legitimate, but it can be satisfied by real mystery, real discovery, real complexity, which exist in abundance. The genuine story of human development contains wonder enough without embellishment. In-group identity. Believing in alternative theories can create community. People who share these beliefs form groups, attend conferences, discuss evidence online. The belief becomes part of identity, reinforced by social bond. Once a belief becomes identity, changing it becomes threatening, not just intellectually, but socially. People resist evidence that would separate them from their community. Dunning-Kruger effect. People with limited knowledge in a field often overestimate their understanding. Someone who's read alternative history books, but not academic archaeology, may feel confident evaluating evidence, not realizing how much context and expertise they lack. This isn't stupidity. It's a universal human tendency. Experts also suffer from bias, but it means that confident amateur pronouncements about archaeological evidence should be viewed with appropriate caution. Understanding these psychological factors doesn't dismiss people who believe in lost civilization. It helps explain why such beliefs are appealing and persistent, despite lack of evidence. Addressing the beliefs requires addressing the psychological needs they serve, not just presenting contrary evidence. Chapter 11. What real discovery looks like. To understand why mainstream archaeology isn't hiding evidence, it helps to see how genuine revolutionary discoveries are handled. Homo naledi. In 2013, cavers exploring the Rising Star cave system in South Africa found a chamber full of fossil bone. Paleoanthropologist Lee Berger organized excavation, recruiting small-bodied scientists who could fit through narrow passage. What they found was revolutionary. A new human species, Homo naledi, with a puzzling combination of primitive and advanced features. The brain was small, primitive, but the feet were modern-like. The hands showed adaptations for both climbing and tool use. The context suggested deliberate body disposal, possibly evidence of burial behavior in a species with a small brain. How was this handled? Not suppressed, celebrated. Berger published in high-profile journal, made the fossils available for study by other researchers, shared CT scans and casts widely. The discovery challenged established ideas about human evolution, and the scientific community engaged with it vigorously. Debates continue about Homo naledi's place in human evolution, its age, its behavior, but the debate is happening openly in peer-reviewed publication with evidence available for examination. Ancient DNA revolution. The ability to extract and sequence DNA from ancient remains has transformed archaeology, revealing migration, interbreeding, and population changes invisible in the physical record. This technology emerged from mainstream science, is published in mainstream journal, and has revised our understanding of prehistory significantly. Neanderthal interbreeding. The complexity of European population history. The timing of human migration, all revealed through ancient DNA. None of this was suppressed. It was celebrated as a breakthrough, funded generously, and pursued intensively by researchers worldwide. LIDAR in Mesoamerica. As mentioned earlier, LIDAR surveys have revealed massive Maya settlements invisible from the ground. This technology, applied by mainstream archaeologists, has shown that Maya civilization was larger, more complex, and more populous than visible ruins suggested. The researchers published in Nature, spoke to media, shared data with colleagues. Far from suppressing revelations about ancient sophistication, they celebrated them. These examples demonstrate that archaeology welcomes revolutionary discoveries when evidence is solid. The resistance that alternative researchers experience isn't because their ideas are revolutionary. It's because their evidence doesn't meet scientific standards. Chapter 12. What if we're wrong? Intellectual honesty requires considering, what if mainstream archaeology is wrong about something significant? What would that look like? And how would we know? Science has been wrong before. Continental drift was rejected for decades before plate tectonics was accepted. Ulcers were attributed to stress until bacterial infection was proven. Established theories can be mistaken. How can wrong ideas persist in science? Paradigm inertia. As Thomas Kuhn documented, scientific paradigms resist change. Evidence that contradicts the paradigm is often dismissed, explained away, or ignored until it becomes overwhelming. This is a real phenomenon in science. Social dynamic. Science is a human activity with social dimension. Researchers depend on grant, jobs, publication. Challenging established ideas can hurt careers. This creates conservative pressure. Limited evidence. Archaeological evidence is incomplete. Most sites haven't been excavated. Many artifacts have been destroyed, lost, or remain undiscovered. We're working with fragments of the past, and our reconstruction might be significantly wrong. What would indicate mainstream archaeology is wrong about lost civilizations? Consistent anomaly. If genuinely out-of-place artifacts consistently appeared in controlled excavation, advanced technology in Pleistocene contexts, for example, this would challenge mainstream views. So far, this hasn't happened. Claimed OO parts either don't hold up to scrutiny or have conventional explanation. Genetic signature. If genetic analysis revealed a distinct population, ancestral to multiple civilizations, different from known prehistoric populations, this would suggest a lost source population. Genetics shows no such signature. Written records. If undeciphered scripts were shown to contain advanced knowledge, accurate astronomy, mathematics beyond known capability, historical records mentioning lost civilization, this would be evident. Deciphered ancient scripts show sophisticated but period-appropriate knowledge. Physical remains. If ruins clearly predating known civilizations were found, with artifacts demonstrating advanced technology, properly excavated and dated, this would revolutionize archaeology. Such remains haven't been found despite extensive survey. The absence of these forms of evidence doesn't prove lost civilizations didn't exist. Absence of evidence isn't proof of absence, but it means the hypothesis lacks positive support. If mainstream archaeology is wrong, the error is more likely to be underestimating the capabilities of known peoples than missing an entirely lost civilization. We've repeatedly learned that ancient peoples, Neolithic builders, Bronze Age engineers, indigenous cultures worldwide were more sophisticated than earlier archaeologists credited. This revision continues. Chapter 13. The Future of Archaeological Discovery. What discoveries might the future bring? Where are the genuine frontiers of archaeological research? Underwater archaeology. As mentioned, submerged landscapes contain untold evidence of human habitation. Technology for underwater survey and excavation continues to improve. The continental shelves of the world are enormous unexplored territory. We may find Paleolithic sites on what was coastal plain during the Ice Age. We may find settlements drowned by rising seas. We may find evidence of coastal migration route. This is a genuine frontier. Remote sensing, satellite imagery, LiDAR, ground-penetrating radar, and other technologies allow archaeologists to find sites invisible from the surface. Every year, new sites are identified through remote sensing. The pace of discovery is accelerating. In jungle-covered regions like Central America and Southeast Asia, LiDAR continues to reveal vast ancient landscapes. In deserts, satellite imagery identifies buried structure. In agricultural areas, crop marks reveal ancient features. Much remains discovered. Ancient DNA. The ancient DNA revolution is ongoing. As techniques improve, DNA can be extracted from older and more degraded remains. Population histories of undersampled regions will become clearer. Relationships between ancient peoples will be mapped in detail. This may reveal surprising, unexpected migrations, unknown population contacts, more complex histories than current models suggest. But it's more likely to add complexity to known pattern than to reveal entirely unknown civilization. Climate reconstruction. Understanding ancient climates helps interpret archaeological evidence. Ice cores, lake sediments, tree rings, and other proxies reveal past climate variation. As these records improve, we better understand how climate shaped human history. Climate catastrophe may have played larger roles than currently appreciated. The Younger Dryas, the 4.2 kiloyear event, the late Bronze Age collapse, all involved climate stress. Future research may identify additional climate-driven changes. Interdisciplinary integration. Archaeology increasingly integrates with genetics, climate science, linguistics, ecology, and other fields. This interdisciplinary approach reveals patterns invisible to any single discipline. The future of archaeology is collaborative, technological, and global. Discoveries will continue to surprise us, revise our understanding, and reveal the complexity of human history. Chapter 14. Being a good consumer of archaeological claim. How should a thoughtful person evaluate claims about archaeology? Whether mainstream or alternative? Consider the source. Who's making the claim? What are their credentials? Have they published in peer-reviewed venues? Are they financially motivated? Selling books? Attracting viewers? This doesn't mean only credentialed experts can have valid ideas, but expertise matters in a complex field. Be more skeptical of claims from people without relevant training. Examine the evidence. What specific evidence supports the claim? Have you seen the actual evidence, or just heard someone describe it? Is the evidence documented, published, available for examination? Many alternative claims rely on describing evidence rather than presenting it. Actual examination often reveals the evidence is weaker than claim. Look for peer review. Has the claim been examined by independent experts, published in venues with editorial standards, or is it only promoted through popular media and internet forums? Peer review isn't perfect, but it filters out many errors and unsupported claims. Consider alternative explanation. Is the proposed explanation the only possibility, or are there simpler alternatives? Claims of ancient technology should be evaluated against the possibility of sophisticated but conventional techniques. Occam's razor suggests preferring simpler explanations when they account for the evidence. Beware of confirmation bias. Are you evaluating the evidence fairly, or seeking to confirm what you already believe? Try to consider how someone with the opposite view would interpret the same evidence. Understand uncertainty. Both mainstream and alternative claims involve uncertainty. Be suspicious of absolute certainty from either side. Real knowledge is tentative, subject to revision. Embrace complexity. Real history is messy, complicated, full of exceptions and surprises. Simple narratives, whether mainstream or alternative, probably oversimplify. Stay curious. The goal isn't to settle on a fixed view, but to keep learning. New discoveries will continue to surprise us. Remain open to revision while maintaining critical standard. Chapter 15. The wonder of what we know. Let me conclude this extended exploration by emphasizing something often lost in debates about lost civilization: the genuine wonder of what we actually know about human history. The human journey. Our species emerged in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago. For most of that time, we were hunter-gatherers, living in small bands, developing language, creating art. The oldest known art dates to at least 73,000 years ago, burying our dead with ritual and adapting to diverse environments. Beginning roughly 12,000 years ago, in several places independently, we developed agriculture, one of the most transformative inventions in history. This allowed settled life, population growth, specialization, and eventually cities. The first cities emerged around 6,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley. Writing was invented to manage the complexity of urban life. Civilizations rose and fell, each building on previous achievements, each leaving records for future generations. Across the world, people achieved remarkable things: the engineering of the pyramids, the mathematics of the Maya, the navigation of the Polynesians, the philosophy of the Greeks, the metallurgy of the Chinese, the architecture of the Khmer. This story, the real story, is extraordinary. It shows humans overcoming challenges, developing knowledge incrementally, making mistakes and recovering, achieving wonders through intelligence and cooperation. It doesn't need embellishment. It doesn't need lost super civilizations. It's already magnificent. The ongoing discovery. We're still discovering this story. Every year, new sites are excavated, new artifacts analyzed, new insights gained. The past is not fixed. Our understanding of it continues to evolve. Some future discovery may genuinely revolutionize our understanding. We should remain open to that possibility. But revolution will come from solid evidence, not from wishful thinking or conspiracy theories. The enterprise of archaeology. Archaeology is a human enterprise with human limitations. Archaeologists make mistakes, have biases, sometimes resist new ideas longer than they should. The field isn't perfect, but it's self-correcting. Revolutionary evidence eventually prevails. Consensus shifts when warranted. The process is slow, often frustratingly slow, but it works. Participating in this enterprise, even as interested observers, connects us to the grand project of understanding our past, our origins, our nature as a species. Part 3. Specific case studies. In-depth case study 1. The Bosnian Pyramids. One of the most persistent alternative archaeology claims of recent decades concerns the Bosnian Pyramids, hills near Visoko, Bosnia and Herzegovina, that businessman Semir Osmanagic claims are actually ancient pyramids, potentially the largest and oldest in the world. Osmanagic's claims, promoted since 2005, assert that several hills near Visoko are pyramids built by an ancient civilization. The largest, Pyramid of the Sun, is 220 meters high, taller than the Great Pyramid. They're over 12,000 years old, possibly 25,000 plus years old. The hills are covered by soil and vegetation, but contain constructed chambers, tunnels, and passageways. The pyramids generate mysterious energy field. This represents the greatest archaeological discovery ever made. These claims attracted international attention, tourism, and controversy. What does the evidence actually show? Geological assessment. Geologists who've examined the hills conclude they're natural formations, called flatirons, tilted geological strata, eroded to form angular hillsides. This is common geology, found worldwide. The pyramid shapes result from natural erosion patterns, where harder rock layers cap softer layers, creating angular slopes. The precise angles cited by Osmanagic are within the range of natural variation for such formation. The archaeological excavations. Osmanagic's foundation has conducted excavations, uncovering what they call artificial structures. Independent archaeologists who visited the site report the paving stones are natural fractured rock. The concrete blocks are natural geological formations, conglomerate or breccia. The tunnels are natural caves, some extended by recent mining activity. The inscriptions are natural markings or recent additions. Professional archaeological organizations, including the European Association of Archaeologists, have condemned the project as pseudo-archaeology that damages genuine archaeological sites in the area, which does have real medieval and Roman remains. The dating. Osmanagic's dating claims are based on questionable methods or materials not directly associated with supposed construction. Radiocarbon dating of organic material in tunnels doesn't date the tunnel's construction. It dates when the organic material entered. The energy claim. Osmanagic has claimed the pyramids emit electromagnetic energy, ultrasound frequencies, and other mysterious emanations. These claims have not been verified by independent scientists. The equipment and methods used are questionable. The response. Mainstream archaeologists don't suppress discussion of the Bosnian pyramid. They publicly critique the claims, publish analyses, and explain why the evidence doesn't support Osmanagic's interpretation. The Bosnian pyramids case illustrates several common features of pseudo-archaeology. Sensational claims without rigorous evidence, misinterpretation of natural formation as artificial, dismissal of expert criticism as conspiracy, financial, and nationalistic motivation, damage to genuine archaeology in the region. Case Study 2. The Longyu Cave. The Longyu Caves in Zhejiang Province, China, present a genuine archaeological mystery that deserves examination. Discovered in 1992, when a local man pumped water from what he thought was a pond, the caves turned out to be massive artificial caverns carved into siltstone bedrock. 24 such caverns have been identified, covering approximately 30,000 square meters. The caves feature regular chisel marks on walls, ceiling, and floors, carved pillars supporting ceilings, pools, bridges, and chambers, remarkable uniformity in construction. What makes them mysterious? No historical records mention their construction. No debris from excavation has been found. An enormous amount of material was removed. The purpose is unknown. Dating is uncertain, though estimates suggest they might be 2,000 plus years old. Unlike the Bosnian pyramids, the Longyu caves are genuinely artificial, carved by humans. The mystery is why they were carved, by whom and when. Possible explanations proposed. Quarries for siltstone, but the stone doesn't seem to have been used. Nearby. Storage facilities, but for what? Military installations, hiding troops or supplies, religious or ceremonial spaces, royal tombs or palaces, but no remains found. Fish breeding ponds. The pools could hold water. Chinese archaeologists continue to study the caves. They're protected as cultural heritage. Research is ongoing. This is how genuine archaeological mysteries should be handled, with continued investigation, multiple hypotheses, and acknowledgement of uncertainty. The caves don't require lost civilizations to explain. They require understanding of local history and culture, which is being pursued through standard archaeological methods. Case Study 3. The Richat Structure. The Richat Structure, also called the Eye of the Sahara, in Mauritania, is a striking geological formation, a 50-kilometer diameter circular feature visible from space, consisting of concentric rings of rock, Some alternative researchers have proposed it's the remains of Atlantis, noting its circular structure and location in northwest Africa, near where Plato placed Atlantis. What does geology say? The reshot structure is a deeply eroded geological dome. Originally formed by volcanic activity pushing up rock layers, it was subsequently eroded over millions of years. Different rock layers, having different hardness, eroded at different rate, creating the concentric ring. Evidence for natural origin. The rock layers show no evidence of artificial construction. The formation contains Cretaceous period rock, approximately 100 million years old. Similar dome structures exist elsewhere, though this one is unusually symmetrical and large. Geological process fully explain its features. The Atlantis connection requires ignoring. Plato described Atlantis as sinking into the ocean, not sitting in a desert. The timescale Plato gave doesn't match. No artifacts, structures, or remains have been found despite the area being studied by geologists. The reshot structure is geologically interesting, but it's not Atlantis. Case study 4. The Baltic Sea anomaly. In 2011, Swedish treasure hunters using sonar discovered an unusual formation on the Baltic Sea floor, an object approximately 60 meters in diameter with a 400-meter track behind it, as if it had moved along the seabed. Images generated media speculation that it might be a crashed UFO, an underwater structure, or evidence of ancient technology. What investigation revealed? The Ocean X team that discovered it conducted multiple dives and released photographs and descriptions. However, the team has financial interest in promoting the mystery, documentary sales, diving tourism. Their descriptions have changed over time. Independent scientific examination has been limited. Geologists who've examined available data suggest the formation is likely a glacial deposit, rocks dropped by melting ice sheets at the end of the Ice Age, natural rock formation, possibly a combination of geological features appearing more regular in sonar than reality track. Could be a glacial feature. Ice sheets dragging material across the seabed created similar marks throughout the Baltic. Without proper scientific investigation, core samples, detailed mapping, professional analysis, the Baltic Sea anomaly remains unexplained. But unexplained doesn't mean alien spacecraft. It means we need better data. Case Study 5. The Nazca Line. The Nazca Lines in southern Peru represent one of archaeology's most famous mysteries, and one that actually has substantial scholarly understanding, despite persistent alternative claims. The lines are geoglyphs created by removing reddish surface pebbles to reveal lighter soil beneath. They include geometric shape, straight lines extending for kilometers, and figural representation, a spider, hummingbird, monkey, condor, and other creatures. The largest figures are several hundred meters across, best appreciated from the air. Alternative explanations have included ancient airstrips for spacecraft, messages to alien visitors, evidence of ancient flight technology, astronomical computers, evidence of lost civilization with aerial capability. What archaeology has established? The Nazca culture, approximately 100 BCE, 800 CE, created the line. We know this from radiocarbon dating of associated materials pottery and artifacts at the sites matching known Nazca styles, continuity with smaller geoglyphs that preceded the large one, ethnographic connections to later Andean cultures. How they were made is understood. The technique is simple. Remove dark rocks to reveal light. Soil planning used small-scale models, scaled up using grids and stakes. The lines can be traced from ground level. You don't need aerial views to create them. Experimental archaeology has successfully replicated the methods. Why they were made is debated, but within normal archaeological parameters. Ritual pathways walked during ceremonies. Water cult symbols. The region is extremely dry, and many figures relate to water. Astronomical alignment. Some lines point to solstice position. Representations of constellation, clan, or lineage marker. Combinations of these purposes. The lines are visible from nearby hills. You don't need aircraft to see them. You can only see them from the air claim is exaggerated. The Nazca lines are remarkable achievements that demonstrate sophisticated planning and community organization, but they don't require advanced technology or alien intervention. They require ingenious humans using simple techniques to create lasting monument in a uniquely preserving environment. Case Study 6. Easter Island, Rapa Nui, presents genuine historical mystery, while also demonstrating how alternative theories can distort understanding. The island, one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth, was settled by Polynesian voyagers sometime between 800 to 1200 CE. The famous Moai, massive stone statues averaging 4 meters high and 14 tons, were carved by the Rapa Nui people and transported across the island to ceremonial platforms called ahu Alternative theories have claimed the statues are too heavy to move with available technology. The island's isolation proves external assistance. The statues represent alien visitors or lost civilization teachers. Archaeological understanding. We now know quite well how the moai were created and moved. They were carved at Rano Raraku Quarry using stone picks. Examples still lie in the quarry at various stages of completion. They were moved using wooden sledges, log rollers, and ropes. Experimental archaeology has successfully moved moai replicas using these methods. Recent research suggests some were walked upright using rocking motion and ropes. The Rapa Nui oral traditions describe how the statues were moved using coordinated human labor, which matches archaeological reconstruction. The genuine mystery of Easter Island concerns its ecological and societal collapse. When Europeans arrived in 1722, the island was largely deforested. The population was small and impoverished, and moai construction had ceased. What caused this collapse? Theories include deforestation through statue transport, cutting trees for rollers and ropes, overpopulation, and resource depletion. Rat introduction, rats eating palm seeds, preventing forest regeneration. Climate variation, internal warfare, European introduced diseases after contact. The ecological collapse of Easter Island is a genuine cautionary tale about sustainability, but it's about known human behaviors, not lost civilization. Final reflection, the nature of historical knowledge. As we conclude this extensive exploration, let's reflect on what we've learned about how we know what we know about the past. Archaeological knowledge is provisional. Our understanding changes as new evidence emerges. This isn't weakness. It's how knowledge properly works. Certainty in the face of incomplete evidence is the real weakness. Incomplete. We've excavated perhaps 1% of archaeological sites worldwide. Most artifacts have been lost to time, decay, or destruction. We're working with fragments, making inferences, acknowledging gaps. Interpretive. The same evidence can support multiple interpretations. Archaeology involves judgment, inference, and debate. Consensus emerges slowly as evidence accumulates and interpretations are tested. Cumulative. Each generation of researchers builds on previous work. Knowledge accumulates. Errors are corrected. Understanding deepens. The process is slow but progressive. Self-correcting. When evidence contradicts established ideas, the ideas eventually change. Göbekli Tepe revised our understanding of Neolithic capability. Pre-Clovis evidence revised American prehistory. The process works. The appeal and danger of alternative theories. Alternative archaeological theories appeal because they offer certainty in place of scholarly uncertainty, provide simple explanations for complex phenomena, create communities of believers, satisfy desires for wonder, meaning, and hidden truth, challenge authorities that some distrust, but they're dangerous because they distract from genuine mysteries worth investigating, disrespect ancient peoples by denying their achievements, can have racist implications, attributing non-European achievements to outside help, waste resources that could support real research damage, genuine archaeological sites, as at Visoko, train people in poor reasoning that affects other areas of life. What we should take forward from this exploration, I hope you'll take. Respect for ancient peoples. They were as intelligent as us, accomplished remarkable things with limited tools, and deserve credit for their achievement. Appreciation for real archaeology. The genuine process of discovery is fascinating, ongoing, and open to participation. Read archaeological journals, visit sites and museums, follow legitimate research. Critical thinking skills. Evaluate claims based on evidence. Consider alternative explanation. Understand the difference between unexplained and impossible. Recognize your own biases. Comfort with uncertainty. It's okay not to know everything. Mysteries exist. They're being investigated. Some may never be solved. That's part of being human. Wonder at what we know. The real story of human history, our emergence in Africa, our spread across the globe, our development of culture, technology, and civilization is extraordinary. It needs no embellishment. The continuing story human history isn't finished being discovered. In the years and decades ahead, new sites will be found through remote sensing and chance discovery. Ancient DNA will reveal population histories in unprecedented detail. Underwater archaeology will explore submerged landscapes. Undeciphered scripts may yield their secrets. New analytical techniques will extract information from existing artifacts. Climate records will illuminate how environment shaped human development. Some discoveries will surprise us, challenge assumption, force revision. That's the nature of discovery. When it happens, it will happen through rigorous research, careful evidence gathering, and peer review, not through conspiracy theories or wishful thinking. The process is slow, often frustrating, sometimes contentious, but it works, and it's the only reliable path to understanding our path. A final word. The question that began this journey, what if archaeologists are hiding evidence, reflects understandable human impulse, distrust of authority, desire for wonder, pattern recognition, narrative thinking. These impulses aren't shameful. They're part of what makes us human. But the answer to the question is clear. Archaeologists aren't hiding evidence of lost civilization. There's no conspiracy. There's no suppression. There's just the slow, difficult, fascinating process of discovering our path. A process that's open, self-correcting, and genuinely revolutionary when evidence warrants. The real story of human history is magnificent enough. We don't need to invent lost civilizations to find wonder in our past. We just need to look carefully at what's actually there. The ingenuity of our ancestors, the complexity of their society, the achievements they accomplished with intelligence, cooperation, and determination. That story, the true story, is worth knowing, worth sharing, worth protecting from distortion. It connects us to everyone who came before, everyone who built, created, struggled, and survived, so that we could be here asking these questions. When you look at the Great Pyramid, don't see mystery requiring impossible explanations. See thousands of workers, decades of effort, sophisticated engineering, cultural determination, human achievement in stone. When you look at Göbekli Tepe, see hunter-gatherers with symbolic complexity and organizational capability beyond what we assumed. When you look at the Nazca Line, see a people communicating with their gods through monuments designed to endure. See human, see ourselves, see what we're capable of, and then look forward. What will future archaeologists find when they excavate our civilization? What will survive of us, our building, our artifact, our record? What will they understand, and what will mystify them? We're part of this story too. The chain stretches from the first stone tools to whatever comes next. Understanding where we came from helps us understand who we are and what we might become. That's what archaeology offers. Not hidden secrets or suppressed truth, but connection to our shared human journey. That journey is extraordinary. It always has been. It doesn't need lost civilizations to be wonderful. It just needs us to pay attention. Thank you for taking this journey through the mystery, the evidence, the psychology, and the wonder of human history. May you continue to ask questions, seek evidence, think critically, and marvel at the genuine achievements of our species. The past is waiting to be discovered. The real past. And it's more amazing than any fiction we could invent. Rest well, knowing that the story of humanity, your story, our story, is still being written, still being discovered, still full of genuine surprises yet to come. And when those surprises arrive, they'll come through the patient work of research, the accumulation of evidence, and the slow but reliable process of expanding human knowledge. That's not a conspiracy. That's science. That's archaeology. That's how we learn the truth about who we are and where we came from. And that truth, when we find it, is always worth the search. The end.